Welcome back, everyone. This is Growing with My Fellow Growers, episode 102. I'm happy to have everyone back, and this is at Jack Greenstock. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm sure that there are a few people that are going to be piling in. I'm going to make sure that the chat gets going here. I might have to send a message first so that everybody is able to talk, and mute myself because I'm hearing myself in my headphones right now. Alrighty, there we go. Well, now that I've got myself muted, and I'm going to type hi into the chat, so hopefully people can start talking, and remind myself to switch over to the live chat. I'm going to first pass it over to Aaron the Grower. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me, panel, and Jack. It's really great to be back. I am Aaron the Grower. I've been growing cannabis for over 15 years, last 7 or so of which have been organic. You can look at my website, atgacres.com, my YouTube channel, which is relatively new, ATG Acres, Aaron the Grower, or my Instagram, ATG Acres. Nice to see everybody. Good to be back.
Happy to have you back. It is good to see everybody. I see Smart Poker, Sour Diesel Tangy, and Anova, as well as many others in the chat. I want to pass it over next to Dr. MJ.
Hey, yeah, Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. I am, happy to be here on Valentine's Day. I'm not sure my wife is totally thrilled about it, but I'm happy to spend a couple hours with you guys. I think I'll be able to stick around for most of the show at least. And yeah, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. It should be fun.
Happy Valentine's Day to you and all the other couples out there, and even the single people. Happy Lonely Singles Day, as some people like to call it, or the Hallmark holiday, which I'm sure our wives don't want to hear. But my wife and I celebrated last night, got some takeout sushi, and spent some time together at home, which was lovely. So shout out to Lady Greenstock. Make sure to give her a follow on Instagram if you all don't already. But I want to pass it next to Matthew Gates. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty good. This is Matthew Gates, Integrated Pest Management Specialist, and I've been pretty productive, like we were talking about earlier. If you'd like to find more pest-related information, especially how to get rid of such things, you can find me in a couple of different places. You can find me on Twitter at SyncAngel. You can find me on Instagram also at SyncAngel. And you can also find my recent videos about beet curly top virus in cannabis. It's newly found in Arizona. I have a video coming out about powdery mildew, a new species was found in cannabis, so I'll be talking about that. And I also recently documented for the first time anywhere that I know of a grape mealybug in cannabis in southwestern North America. So that was a really cool discovery. And so IPM information, Matthew Gates. You can check me out there.
Thank you. Always great to have you here. And that's pretty cool to be one of the first to document something on cannabis. I'd imagine there's going to be a lot more of that in the next 10 or so years because we just haven't had a lot of people like yourself looking at the pest for a long time with the photos. So I'm glad more people like you are getting into it and identifying and putting that information out there for the people. So, and also shout out to Arizona, a lot of newly recreational, I think, or adult use. I don't know what they call it in that state in particular, but shout out to them for advancing their laws pro cannabis. And despite the beet curly top virus, that's a little bit unfortunate, but it is good to know about it. The first way to get over it is to know that you have it. So you can go from there. But next up, we have Michigander, Spartan Grown.
What's up, everybody? I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, or you can send me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com. I'm a organic grower here in Michigan at home, and then at work, I'm a commercial grower, and I grow with synthetics.
Welcome back. Always good to have you. I know you're on many panels, so we always are happy to see you on this one as well. Next up, we got the American one.
Hello, Jack, the panel. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. It's great to be here. I hope everyone's having a great weekend and a great February. And I'm glad to be here and talk cannabis.
Always great to have you. And last but certainly not least, we've got Noah the Grower, who popped out there for a second and he just popped back in. So hopefully if you can hear me, Noah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, how's it going, everyone? I'm Noah the Grower on Instagram, and you can find me there. I've been growing cannabis for over 10 years and always have a great time with everybody, learning stuff and trying to get better and help others too. So yeah, nice to be here. Happy Valentine's Day. And how's it going, panel?
Going pretty well. I got a little bit of a stuffy nose, but none of the other bad symptoms of that thing that's going around. I don't even want to mention to throw ourselves into the bad algorithm like that. But welcome everybody in the chat. Hope everybody's had a great time. And I wanted to start off first, just like last week. I got another question from Sour Diesel Tangy in my DMs. He was asking, question suggestion: how big of a filter fan is necessary to scrub a 12 by 12 sealed room? I figured 1200 CFM fan and a can filter 100. That's $800. That ain't cheap. No worries if you don't use the question, just figured I'd ask. I figure it's actually a good question because I know a lot of guys on this panel have worked in rooms that big or larger and will have some suggestions. So I'd like to pass it off to whoever wants to take it.
Well, I'll say that I think it matters. It matters the kind of the cannabis you're growing. I have the biggest 48-inch. I forget the name of it, the big one, but I have the biggest one that I could get, and I never really had luck with the first one, and it was like I think I paid like $300 for it, and then the second one I bought, I mean, you can still smell it, but I'm running. It would matter how many plants you have, how much terps are in those particular strains. Like I'm running 5,000 watt lights, and one of them is not big enough. And then I thought, oh well, my bedroom exhaust fan, maybe it's pulling through under the door, and I went and replaced both of them, and I spent like $600-700. So I would just look and talk to people, and see what's working for them. And then like I said, it's also kind of strain dependent. That's what I think.
Is this, Jack, was this for exhausting a room, or is this for
Odor,
clearing clearing the air in a sealed space?
I believe they're referring to, they're going to have like one large exhaust to basically they're going to, well, yeah, if it's a sealed room, they're not going to have an exhaust. So that's a little bit of an interesting question.
I'm confused about what they're using the fan for, because I think that we're used to giving recommendations for exhausting fans, but if it really is a sealed space, then you may be using the fan for some other purpose. In general, you don't need to filter the air in a sealed room. You just need to condition it. You condition it with air conditioning or heating and carbon dioxide and dehumidification or humidification. But you don't necessarily need to filter it.
How's my audio? Sorry, I think my mic just bugged out there. Am I sounding deep or is
You're good.
Good, okay.
I'll say
You're sounding a little bit distant.
Okay, I'm gonna unplug and replug back in, but go ahead, Tal.
all right. Yeah, I'll take a couple minutes for you. So when I went to first get my tents, the first tents that I was buying, I told the guy what I wanted, and at the grocery store, and he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah," and I need a filter and stuff. So basically, I run my filter outside the tents, and I have them sucking through the lights, and that's like a heat exhaust in my tents, and it sucks the heat out and blows it through the filter into the room that the two tents are in, and that all circulates. There's only like a foot behind. Basically, that room is full of tent. There is no other room. There's like a 2-foot space that I could walk in and get to places on the front, and in the back it's even less. So
Right, but that's a ventilated space.
Yes, yeah.
That's
But
just not a sealed room. So I just want to know if this is really a sealed room, or if this is just, maybe he said sealed room, but he's thinking it's exhausted. Because I don't think you need to filter the air.
Maybe he means like a closed room or something.
But I'm doing it for the filter and for the suck the heat out of the tent. But let me finish. So when the guy suggested I get an 8-inch fan with this huge ass, it's got to be the 4-footer that Noah was talking about. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "No, trust me, you want this one." And for 5-6 years now, it's been safe and sound, and knock on wood, it hasn't stopped blowing, and there's not a scent in the air. But yeah, I just wanted to say what happened with my setup. I thought, and I would have thought like a 6-inch fan. It's 2 4x4-foot tents sucking through. And what also I would say is, if you're also going to try and use it to eliminate heat, that changes things, because if it's too small, it won't suck out enough of the heat for you as well. So I'll just throw that in there.
I think there might be like an equation online of how much like CFM you need per square foot of your, or maybe it's cubic foot of your grow room. I think it's CFM,
People say either to be able to replace the air in the space every minute or every 2 minutes.
let me also mention
So
quick.
it depends on the cubic feet of the grow space. You would like a fan rated, if you're setting up a proper ventilated grow space, you want to be able to exhaust all of the air in that space every 2 minutes at the most, usually per minute.
Let me just add quick that the way I have it set so that sucking through the lights, my tents are under constant suction pressure.
Negative pressure?
Yes, negative pressure. So there is no way, even when I open up the zippers, there is no way that waft smell will come out really, unless you really leave it open, and open all the doors and shit. But yeah, that's pretty much why I did it, and it's definitely negative. The only thing that sucks is it does suck in the walls a little bit on the sides. But when I have my males and stuff, and I have all my tents like that, sucking like that, so that even if there's males in the room, at least it helps a little bit to not let it escape it so easily,
No, I totally agree with that. One thing I wanted to say is right now I'm making Velvet Punch F3s, and the female Velvet Punch F2s are extremely they're loud. They stink a lot. They're like probably week 4 of flower, but sometimes I've realized like the carbon filter, it's at the point where the outside of it's getting like a little bit of a darker color. It's not pure white anymore. And in the past, I've actually just taken, because they're a lot cheaper to replace, just remove the cover and put a new cloth cover onto it. And that will make it more effective for blocking smell again. So if your carbon filter ever does stop working like mine is currently, I think that's a pretty cheap and easy fix. But I've also heard of people like taking them outside, taking it apart, pouring the carbon out and like laying it in the sun. And I think the sun will basically reactivate the carbon essentially.
Well,
on a lot of those, you can flip the flange around. So you can reverse the direction that it's going to pull through, and that really helps the filter use the other end of the filter. So you can just unscrew the caps on both ends and put them on the opposite ends, and then you connect the filter from the other side. I think almost every carbon filter that I've seen is made like that with a reversible flange. And yeah, Jack, the pre-filters, I have to replace those every single grow. In fact, I got a roll of this material that they use to filter for air conditioning pre-filters, and I just wrap it around my carbon filter. It's a whole hell of a lot cheaper than buying a new one of those pre-filters every time. And whatever fun stuff is in our air here in LA will not wash out of the pre-filter.
I never even tried to wash it. They get so dirty that I just pull them off, and I think it's like $5 or $6 for a new one.
It's like greasy and nasty. Yeah, it's awful. It makes me kind of sick to be breathing the air.
Yeah, well, it is thankful that we have plants that are somewhat filtering it as well and cleaning up the air somewhat, but just nice to be in a grow room with plants that smell amazing. Spartan Grown, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this matter. And Sour Diesel Tangy, you are with us in the chat, or at least you were earlier, so if you could clarify what you meant about the whole sealed room thing. Are you going to be going for an actual sealed room and just like trying to scrub the air in there, or are you trying to ventilate and maybe you just sealed that space with like some sort of sealant, so you're calling it a sealed room, but you're still going to have an exhaust? So sorry, go ahead, Spartan.
I don't use a carbon filter myself. I agree with Doc, and if you have a sealed room, you don't really need one. So, I mean, my best answer would just be find the carbon filter you're going to go with, call the company, and ask them. They're going to give you the best. It's normally, once you size your fan, then you can size your carbon filter to the fan. And then to size your fan, that's where you need your room dimensions. So if you've already got a fan, and then you can go with that fan and call the company that you're getting your carbon filter from. Out of all the ones I've used, I like Fresh the best when I have used them. Can Fan is the other one that I've used, their brand, whatever that was. And
is
I've
Fresh
used,
with a PH, Fresh?
Yes. Yep. PHRESH, I think.
Yeah.
And then I also used one from, it was called like Black Ops or something like that. But by far the best one was Fresh, in my experience.
One cool thing I saw was Shane over at MyGrow. He did build your own for like a guy like myself. I probably actually should have done this because it provided more airflow through the carbon filter, and it also provided like a broader area of carbon that was like passing the air through it. So it was basically scrubbing more of the air, and it like limited the airflow less. But he basically just took a shoebox and it looked like maybe like some sort of air filter, and then he put that on the bottom, covered that with carbon, and then basically close the box, seal it, and then you cut an intake and an exit thing. And he tested it with like the little cardboard flap, and you could see like it versus the actual carbon filter had better airflow. And I'd imagine he's pretty legitimate on all of his other stuff. So I think that it was actually a good tip. So for anybody out there who's looking for a cheaper carbon filter, or one that's even like purpose designed to your space, you could probably make yourself a little box. Like I have a closet set up, but depending on your size, it's something to think of, because sometimes they do get expensive. I think Fresh and some of the other filters are more reasonable, but like the Black Ops or the ones that are marketed like towards cannabis sometimes can be quite expensive. Australian Grow just saying cheers over in the chat. I saw my name light up in red, so I thought there might be a question. But Matthew, I'm curious what your thoughts are on growing plants in a sealed space, whether it's cannabis or otherwise, for IPM purposes. Is there big benefits of sealing the space? And in a non-sealed space, what would be do you have any thoughts on like a recommendation for how much you should recirculate the air, like once a minute, once every 2 minutes? Do you think that matters?
I'd say it definitely matters. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish, of course, for like just about every context, that's true. But sealed versus not sealed, physical barriers, like I've said before many times, are a really great investment. Typically, if you have the resources and the time and the ability to do that, and especially having like multiple layers of defense, a sort of a defense in depth strategy, can really serve you well, because not only can mesh screens like Thrips screen and other insect screens keep out the vast majority of pests, even the very, very, very small ones like Thrips, which are really well known for being able to get through things like this. In addition to just simply isolating yourself from the environment, has a lot of the same benefits that happen for you yourself when you isolate yourself from the environment. You don't get a bunch of ultraviolet radiation, that pests don't like, assuming you don't supplement it yourself. You don't get certain environmental changes, of course, like we were talking about with wind, with air movement, but also humidity and temperature and that kind of a thing. You can have at least a little bit more insulation, and potentially a lot more depending on the setup that you have, and how well you're able to dial that in. But yeah, I don't want to bogart the conversation too much, but that's like the biggest one, is that separation, that physical separation from the environment, the elements, will prevent a lot of pests from even becoming a problem in the first place.
It's definitely a consideration, because I do think people have that option. They can think like, am I going to go into this setup and make it a sealed room, or am I going to have a ventilated setup? Personally, where I'm at in Southern California, I just love the fresh air intake, and it's really easy and convenient and less expensive typically for most people to get started. So that's why I've chosen to go that route, and it's been extremely successful so far. And I think you also might avoid some other issues that can come up with the sealed room if you don't do it just perfectly.
Yeah, it's super expensive to do it perfectly. I mean, I think that if you can get away with a ventilated grow space as a home grower, it's like the return on investment is so much better on a ventilated grow space for most of us. When you really set up a sealed space, almost regardless of the climate that you're growing in, you're going to need to have an air conditioner in there. You're going to need to have a heater in there. You're going to need to have a dehumidifier in there. You're going to need to have a humidifier in there. And you're going to need to supplement carbon dioxide and monitor carbon dioxide, as well as monitor all the rest of those things. So there's a ton of equipment to buy, and there's a ton of operating costs in terms of the electricity to be, running that air conditioner, or running that dehumidifier, or running them both at the same time.
And not for nothing,
in addition to the lights and all the rest of that.
Not just the sensors and other sorts of things that you would need, but it's been my experience that just because the first one that I buy seems to be something that would work, doesn't mean that it does work. And so not only do you necessarily buy the things that you need, but sometimes you need to buy them twice or thrice, because for whatever reason, it was just a shoddy product, or your setup is just different enough that it doesn't really work very well, or there's some sort of interaction problem. So that's another aspect of that operational cost that I think should be considered.
Yeah.
Learning costs.
You'll need all those sensors and things, even if you don't have it. You want all those things, even if you don't have a sealed room. Maybe not as many.
We're not monitoring CO2,
and you won't need them both on at the same time too. But yeah,
the air conditioner and the dehumidifier. Oh, you
the
certainly
air conditioner
can.
Or humidifier, both. Yeah,
you certainly can need to dehumidify the air more than the air conditioner will.
Yeah.
You need to be running the air conditioner at full blast because the lights are hot and it's hot. and you need to
Right.
get the temperature down, and there's still too much humidity, and so you need to turn the dehumidifier on, which creates its own heat, which sort of adds a
It kicks on the
BTU load to
AC,
the
yeah.
AC.
So there's this word I really like. It's called hysteresis, and one of the songs I composed is called Hysteresis for this reason. It's exactly what you just described, Dr. MJ Coco.
Yeah,
It's when you have like an input. For those who don't know, it's when you have an input and you have like there's sort of a accordion effect that happens when in a cycle, in a
right.
system. But
This
it
is
takes
the
some
old
time
lady
for
that
it to.
swallowed the spider, right? And then she
Yes,
swallowed,
I like how you
a
put
bunch
it.
of other things to get the spider. Yeah, and it keeps getting worse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She ended up with a cow.
Right.
When you're running a lot of these big heavy lights, you're going to need to cool them, and you're going to need to dehumidify. I've ran 8,000 watts I ran them for 5 years, and I have 3 dehumidifiers and a 38,000 BTU ideal air for humidity split going. And the second that I didn't have my Quest big dehumidifier, I fought powder mildew for years.
Right.
So yeah, if you're running a big space, most likely you're going to need to dehumidify your air and air conditioning. I can
And
attest to
running them all
that
at the same time,
firsthand.
and you just have a much
Yes,
bigger electricity
all
bill.
at the same time.
And
Right,
Sour Diesel Tangy has a nice dehumidifier. I've seen it. It's either an Andin or a Quest that's sitting right on the edge of this grow room. His tech is pretty up to snuff with like the best stuff that I've seen out there. So I
Yeah.
think that he's pretty well equipped. And I was just making the point, as this is the Cheap Home Grow podcast, that it is not the most inexpensive way to get into cannabis growing, and it's not necessarily necessary for a lot of people, especially with LEDs now, which he is growing under. A lot of them aren't putting off the same amounts of heat in the same way, but it is certainly something to consider. Like all the equipment that you get, every single piece that you add is another point of failure. So if I just have an intake and an exhaust fan versus somebody who's got dehumidifier, humidifier, air conditioner, all those other steps you're adding is another point of failure, but a potential point of failure, I could say. And that's something that we shouldn't ever.
The flip side of this, Jack, is it's another point of success. If you invest in all of that and you have a good dehumidifier and you have a good air conditioner and you have, carbon dioxide and you have good lights, you can sort of really dial in your production. You can bring PPFP up towards 1,500 and really sort of increase the harvest per square foot. But that is sort of not the direction that I think most people will do best in optimizing towards.
I would also
agree.
say that as you get more experience and as you decide, you know what, I am investing a lot of time and effort, maybe I want to like increase my returns, or just as a hobby, it might be it had all these like, beneficial effects perhaps. I could see people maybe moving more towards that and not necessarily have to start with it like other people are referring to. But yeah, definitely an option.
Right. A lot of that is just increasing returns to space too. It's usually a lot cheaper to increase returns overall, just in terms of increasing revenue, just by expanding the size of the production. It's really only once you can't expand the size of the production that it becomes efficient for us as home growers to really try to maximize the returns to space like that.
This lesson in home economics brought to you by Cheap Home Grow Podcast.
Economics is something so overlooked. We have to, honestly, most people don't even budget at all for their month. Like a lot of people, if you look at the stats, like so many people have less than X amount of dollars. Like they can't cover a $500 emergency. They have like no money in savings. There's a lot of people out there like that. So I think growing teaches people so much more than just growing. It teaches you economics of ROIs. Right. So many people have never taken an economics class can tell you what, I ROI'd on that light. I bought it and I had these amount of harvest. I got these amount of ounces over time and it saved me this much money or this or that. So it really expands growers' life, I guess, in a really positive way. And I'm glad that
you're doing business. Yeah. You're sort of thinking in terms of economic production. We're becoming farmers.
And we also ultimately want to like bring our cost of production down as low as possible and make our medicine as affordable and economical for ourselves as possible, even if you can afford to spend the most for. I always like to say quality is cheaper in the long run, so I'd rather invest in a quality input, which is more expensive up front, but often will pay yourself off in the long term.
I don't know. There's much more emphasis in our style of production on the production side of it, as opposed to sort of maximizing the efficiencies and returns to equipment or labor or other things like that. Most growers that I interact with want sort of equipment because it's like cool and like the latest tech or other things like that, I mean, are more important than thinking in terms of maximizing the efficiency of their returns to it.
I've definitely made that mistake before. The attraction of some sort of product that I think will, as some people call it, buy me skill, or at least in some way be more convenient and helpful. Sometimes it really is, but other times, the perception does not match the reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can also build your way up too. I started out in 2008, and
That's the way to.
I just started my closet, old school, and I had a 600-watt light, and I had a 4-inch exhaust that I had tapered down, and I did really well with it. And I was like, hey, this is a lot cheaper than, at the time weed was a lot more expensive in my area. So then I was like, okay, well then now I'm going to go out. I'm going to build another room, and I built a 5x10 with 2,000-watt lights in it. And both times I didn't have to worry about the closet in my bedroom. I had an air conditioner in my window, and my room was always like 74, 75 degrees, no problem. Then I had a really nice exhaust fan when I had my 5x10 room with the 2,000 watts, and I was okay. In the summertime, it would be a little bit, it might get into 78, and I might get a little heat stress in the summer. But then when I thought, okay, now that's it, I'm moving to my new house. I'm going to modify half my garage. I'm going to build this elaborate grow room, spend all this money on it. And then I couldn't understand it. I'm like, man, this dehumidifier is not working. This heater's not working. And when my buddies who was running a big grow said, oh, dude, you need a way bigger air conditioner. You need a way bigger dehumidifier. And the second I did that, it was night and day the quality of my weed, and I've never looked back. So it just, if you're growing in a tent, a 4x4 tent or even a 4x8 tent, yeah, you probably don't need that if you can, dial it in. But if you start getting into some bigger stuff, you're going to have to figure out a way to get the humidity down, and you're going to have to figure out a way to cool it. That's just the bottom line.
Cannabis Mechanical on his Instagram has been talking a lot about the reheat setting on the air conditioners. So if you ever do go into a larger scale, it's something worth looking into. His Instagram and YouTube, Cannabis Mechanical. Spartan Grown, what are you showing us over there?
Pack bowl.
I was trying to show Chad. I was telling him I was smoking bowls of just straight Brax. But it's hard. I can't get it to focus. So
no, it looks good. I understand what you're talking about though, where you, instead of grinding up the bud, you kind of snap the little pieces of the bud off individually, and you smoke them all like as one thing.
Or off
It's
the
very
stems.
pretty.
No, what I do is
pretty.
Off the stems.
Yeah, so that's what I do is when I buck the nugs off the stems, I take care to just cut them at the stems where the stem hits the bud, and then that leaves those two bracts on the stem itself. So then I go through at the end and just knock all those off with my scissors onto a tray, and at the end I get to just smoke bowls upon bowls of just bracts. It's fucking awesome.
What do you think that does? Like the difference? What do you what's the appeal? I know exactly what you're talking about. I've done millions of plants, and I save them, but I've never really done them just straight like that.
It's just
you get no
area.
leaf material. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
I was talking about this a while. Yeah, they have less chlorophyll there. It's sort of a covered up part of the plant. It's an easy part of the flower to separate from the rest of the plant. There's no leaves to trim off, and so it's easier to get a taste of what the cannabis plant that you grew will eventually taste like early on in the curing process or in the drying process. So it's always the sort of what you look to get an early sample of what the bud will eventually taste like.
What you guys are talking about, they used to call these pre-flowers, right? They show up at the base of those stalks. And so they show up earlier than any other flower on the plant. So anytime you have that, it's going to be the most developed terpenes on the plant.
Yeah.
It's the most mature. So they taste the best.
Hey, I was just want to mention about all this home economic stuff. My earthworms eat better than me because they feed my plants. So it's all a point of view, really.
I like your points of view, Tao, like a cookie a day, keep you young. But I wanted to get to your question. You wrote in the Zoom chat that you have a friend who will not be named, but they just wanted to ask, they have a microbial inoculant in a bottle for a long time, and now it smells like alcohol. They were wondering, should they still use it? And unfortunately, Brandon Rust isn't with us tonight because I feel like he'd be a great person to talk to about this stuff because he's worked so closely with Micro Plus, his own product through Bokashi Earthworks and many others. But I'm curious, does anybody else have thoughts on this one for the panel?
I don't know. Is it worth risking your product?
Exactly. If anything's converted to alcohol, like sugar's converting to alcohol, you could damage roots. So I would say just scrap it.
When I was writing the question,
Yeah, agreed.
if
It's
it's
not worth
only one
alcohol.
bottle, right? If it's only one bottle, why even? But so that's what's happening though. There's sugar and yeast in there, probably turning into alcohol, correct?
Or some other organism. Yeah.
Right,
definitely.
right.
There's probably some fermentation going on. Yeah, there's a pretty distinct smell that we all can recognize, and that's probably what the person smelled.
Well, and what their intuition already told them was, hey, this smells bad to me. I think that I don't want to use it. Trust your gut. Like, if you smell it and you're like, I don't want to use this, it seems like it's going to be bad for the plant, you're probably right. It's probably not going to be good. Sometimes stuff smells terrible and it's great for the plants. But if you're like, unless maybe you're losing a ton of money, maybe you've spent like $100 on this bottle and you're like, I really don't want to throw it away.
The fallacy
But
of
even
sunk
then-
cost, Jack. You've already spent that money. That money is already lost. Doing something to damage your plants now is only going to make the losses compounded. This is like once you spent the money, a lot of people are like, well, we don't really want to go, but we already spent the money. It's like, okay, so now you're going to make yourself more miserable as well as having spent a bunch of money that you didn't want to spend.
Been there, done that.
I have an idea.
It's called the fallacy of sunk costs.
Tao, if your buddy's got like a supply of soil sitting around that he's not currently using, that he can inoculate with this microbe plus, and then potentially some fungal activity that could actually micro-remediate whatever potential harm that could do. Give it a month with some mushrooms and it would do the
With
job.
some good stuff, it'll fix it. Yeah. Good idea. Because I don't know the situation. I don't know if it's a 5-gallon or, for all I know, it could be a 55-gallon drum the kid has. I don't know.
Yeah, just dump it over your compost pile. You're good.
And I was going to say, just throw it in with the vegetable, like a plant that you're not too worried about losing, not one of your prized possession plants. Yeah, try it on that.
I would like
comment.
what Aaron was saying, inoculate a pile, inoculate a fucking compost pile. Those microbes go to work on that. Or if they're bad microbes, it's not going to hurt your plant.
Right. The good ones will take over. Yeah.
Yeah. And if the good ones are there, they'll bloom on the food. And if you're turning it and keeping it aerobic, you're going to have good ones. And you can take that compost and then feed your plants. And then your plants still get it.
Shredder0911 in the chat said, and this is actually somebody else that I was thinking about when it comes to these conversations, GMF, which stands for Genetic Memory Farms, who you might want to DM or go watch his episode of fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, because he actually talked about some of the fermentation processes and the chemicals and things that can survive within that and the smells that you're going to get. He's a beer maker and tester as well, but the question that Shredder brought up or comment, they said, GMF, they asked them about this because their labs / molasses mix smells like a strong alcohol. He said to use it, so I do, but no more than 1 milliliter per gallon. So maybe there's a little bit of a, just if you dilute it down enough, it'll be safe to use, but that's another option, I guess. Again, like the others on the panel said, maybe better to use on a compost pile or some spare soil that you have as opposed to potentially risking a plant. And like Dr. MJ said, sometimes with the whole sunk cost thing, it's really just not worth it. Just maybe get a fresh bottle of something else. Like I would recommend Micro Plus. Brandon just started rebottling it. I saw somebody got some. When I got it, mine, something with the microbes when they ship going in the air, the bottle like swells and expands. So he got new caps, but he also sends it in a bag now. So it's like a bottle within a bag. I just saw somebody else who got a copy of 50 Shades of Green. They also got the Micro Plus in the mail in the same thing. I think it was like Roy Glenn Hunter maybe. But yeah, it was the
ultimate male call.
Yeah. And I was like, dude, you're really going to love that Micro Plus, because I definitely do. And it's cool to see that Brandon's figured out some of the issues with the shipping. He said on the last show, he's actually getting a even more advanced cap, so he won't have to put it in a bag. But in the meantime, it's a good fix just so people don't have their mail get all messy and have the outside of the bottle sort of get messed up. But
I got an old one that works good. An old bottle of it. It's awesome. That stuff, yeah.
I love the way that stuff smells. It smells like apple juice to me almost. It's like a really good smelling. But
hey,
plants.
I got a question. So that kind of ties in with the when microbes die, specifically bacteria die in the soil, and because then they have nutrients in them for the plant. Do those become available to the plant, or do they have to go through some sort of process?
Sometimes that's how the nutrients become available to the plant, is literally through the death of the microbes.
Because we were talking about how if you do some things, it might kill off your might kill off your bacteria population. I'm like, well, that just turns it into nutrients pretty much.
Well, you don't want
the cycling though. It immediately arrests the cycling, and that's the opposite of what you do. You don't want to stop that. It's almost like having a sandwich and if you put it down, like you're no longer consuming it, but the nutrients are available. So
Right,
like,
but you're not consuming it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you want to eat it. Yeah.
So
That
like,
It's
makes
best
sense
when
for
it's
Great.
fresh, as they say.
in the way that I
Yeah.
look at that nutrient cycle, I look at it just like the food cycle that we all know in the mammal world. And if you take out the thing at the lowest, at the bottom of that cycle, what's going to happen? Eventually, everything's toast.
It works its way up. Yep.
We all
Yeah.
starve.
That's why you
Because
should
that's
chew
the
your
food
food.
That's why you should feed the soil.
Exactly. So
Yep.
yeah, you would have to reintroduce bacteria if that's what you wiped out. You know what I mean? To keep everything going at that point.
Just want to say, cool to see Genetic Memory Farms is actually live here with us in the chat. They said that they were lurking, cooking a tofu stir fry. So cheers, GMF, Genetic Memory Farms. Always happy to see you. And
Hey,
he also
GMF.
he said to go light. He agreed with Shredder 0911, at least with that. So go ahead, Tal.
Yeah, instinctively, I do that with So I was telling everyone how I use my hash water to water my plants and stuff. Well, I get so much, like some of it sits there for a spell, and it gets a little weird. And so like that's when I only put in like a little bit, and I fill up the rest of the 3 gallons with regular water. But I'm a believer in if you cut anything, it'll be all right if you cut it enough.
At that point, you wonder what the effectiveness actually is. It's like I'm putting a milliliter into 5,000 gallons. Let's see what it does.
The expression is drop in a bucket.
Speaking of, though, dropping a bucket,
Yeah, that's
transitions
safe.
perfect to the next question from Real Red Hairs. They ask, cheap home grow, pH up and down, straight into the reservoir or mix a little into water first. So I want to pass this to Dr. MJ, but I wanted to just also give a tip that I've seen some people do to stretch their pH up and down is they just actually add some to water at a certain concentration that works better for them, because sometimes the concentration it's currently at, if you add 1 drop, it might sway it up and down too much. So if that's the problem for you, you can dilute it a little bit and then use that solution to pH up and down. But Doc, I'll pass.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad practice. Whenever you have to add pH adjuster to nutrient solution that's already mixed, if you add the pH adjuster first, which is tough to do unless you know sort of what your water is really well, adding the pH adjuster sort of, creates a little microclimate or whatever you would call that, as you add it to the nutrient mix with a radically low or a radically high pH, and that can cause things to fall out of solution. So diluting it a little bit before using it is helpful. People that are running reses, whether it's a DWC res or whether it's a auto watering reservoir, you should mix your nutrient solution separately and then add it to the res. You can't sort of just, a lot of people come to me and they end up having problems, and I diagnose it back to the fact that they're adding water to the reservoir. When the reservoir gets low, they're adding water, and then they're adding pH adjuster and CalMag and silica and micro and bloom and all the rest of these stuff. But there's already nutrients dissolved in that water. There was already sort of old water left in the tank, and nothing is going to dissolve sort of properly in that situation. Silica won't dissolve very well. Some of the micronutrients in micro won't dissolve well, and you can end up with sort of issues. So it's best practice to mix your nutrients in a separate container. I just use a 5-gallon bucket. I mix up 4 gallons of nutrient solution at a time. And then you can pour that into the reservoir that already has some, old water in it. I top off during the week, and I'll clean out and rinse everything out once a week, usually, more or less. For adjusting pH, that should be done at the mixing nutrient stage. If you find that your pH is drifting so much in the res that you're forced to adjust it like during the week, you have a bacteria issue. It's almost guaranteed that the issue is your pH is going up, and you can't stop it from going up. And a lot of growers are tempted to just add pH down to the reservoir. It's a real tiny stopgap, because you really need to sort of resolve the bacterial infection that's driving the pH up in the first place. Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did.
So. I agree.
I think you answered it very well, and I greatly appreciate that.
I was going to say, we do the same, like what Dr. Coco suggested, his very first suggestion. That's basically how we would do it at work, is like for example, our veg mix, we know we're using RO water, so we know that's always going to be 0. And
Right.
then we know what our inputs are going to be. So you measure your inputs one time and you know how much pH adjustment you needed. We have a whiteboard and we just write it on the whiteboard. And we're like, okay, so I know, for example, that in our veg mix, it's generally going to take 6 milliliters of pH adjustment. So when it's just straight RO water, before I mix anything, I can mix 5 milliliters in there at least. And then go ahead and mix up my nutrient solution and have to do a small adjustment and not a huge adjustment. So you can kind of you can have your feet in both ends there if you want to.
Yeah. If you have to adjust down, that's usually possible. Do you add down, or are you adjusting up from your?
You see, in the veg, we're pH down.
Yeah, you can, if you are starting with RO. Just so the one issue that you could run into there, if you're using silica and you're starting with RO water, if you for whatever reason had to adjust up and you knew you were going to have to adjust up, if you adjust that RO water up, the silica won't dissolve into water that's like above 9.5 pH. So if you get your starting water up above 9.5, the silica is not going to dissolve into it. But it doesn't matter how acidic it is. So you can get your starting water very acidic and add the silica to it.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. I was just curious. I'm kind of going to shift pace a little bit here because my wife and she actually said to me she thought that there was a skunk outside. And I said, no, that's the plants. Like that's the carbon filter is gone out. Like it's not working anymore. So I was curious if you guys have come across anything, I'll say skunky, because it doesn't, like, it obviously smelled enough like a skunk for her to think that it was actually a skunk. And they do live around here, but I know the real skunk smell because I've smelled them spray in my neighborhood several times, and I know how my plants smell. And when the area of the house she was describing happened to be right where the plants were, and I guess she just didn't put the 2 and 2 together. So I'm curious, has anybody come across any skunky tones in cannabis lately? And if so, what strains were those found on?
No, I like me a good skunky strain, man, but it's been a while since I've had something that I would describe as really
Yeah,
strong.
not that real skunk that I remember, but
I got a
was
super
one-
silver haze that's skunky as I've tasted in the last 10 years.
Sounds really nice. I'm gonna definitely want to try that if I ever get to come up and visit you, because I love super silver haze. Like
The different flavors in that strain are so interesting too. I mean, I haven't had this skunk flavor, but there's been some really interesting flavors.
I've had some really nice spicy ones, some like more citrus. And,
Yeah, kind of spicy. Exactly. It's very distinctive.
I love the high. Like, and I've grown some myself. I've had it at dispensaries, and I've always really liked it. It's funny, but I'll see like super lemon haze, which is also pretty popular and grown a fair amount around where I'm at, or it was for a decent amount of time, and never really rung my bell quite like the super silver haze did. I've had it one good time out of like the 50 times I tried it, but it's really interesting to see the slight variation, even on a pretty haze dominant plant. Those tiny little subtleties really make a huge difference from one strain to the next. So
It's a touchy strain for sure.
I
You
had one that
guys-
was close to skunk, but it was burnt rubber. And before it went to burnt rubber, it had a little skunk, like a real skunk smell. But other than that, no, I haven't seen it recently at all, Jack.
the burnt rubber,
I
is
hear
very-
rumors.
It's close. It's a mercaptan. It's like the base note. It's like I think it's an ester or an alcohol or something. But mercaptan, there's a bunch of like phenylethyl mercaptan, and like there's like 30 different variations of it. One of them's like burnt rubber. One of it's pure rubber. One of it's like skunk odor. So there's definitely those smells. But what I will say is my dog, when I was a kid, got sprayed by a skunk, and it smelled to me more like burnt rubber when I was right up next to the dog, when it would like run next to me, but it smelled like skunk spray when it would be running just throughout the house and shit. So it's interesting the like
I've smelled real
distance from it.
skunk animal and real skunk weed that smelled like real skunk animal. So I know it's a real thing and it exists. So don't let no one tell you that it doesn't.
It was definitely more common in the like early 2000s and late 90s, I would say. But Matthew, sorry, I cut you off again.
But there's, hold on. When other people are smoking cannabis, sometimes it smells skunkier than when I'm smoking it. I've often had the experience where I'm like walking down the street and feel like, oh, oh no, that's somebody's burning one. But actually having like the skunky taste and smell, like when you put your nose up to it, that's a different thing.
That's a great point, because I actually, like, this is pre-COVID time, but there was some kids at a skate park next to they're actually sitting on some benches, but there was two groups of kids. One of them fucking at the skate park ended up walking over to the cellar area, and I smell them from probably like 30 or 40 feet away, and it smelled super fucking skunky, and I haven't smelled like really skunky weed like that in a while, so I walked up and I was like, hey, like, what are y'all smoking on or whatever, and we had a little conversation, and I ended up sitting down with them, and they pulled up in the bag, and when I actually cracked the bag open and smelled it and looked at the buds, didn't smell like skunk at all. But like Dr. MJ was just saying, when they were smoking it from 20 or 30 feet away, it smelled pretty heavy on the skunk. So it was a really interesting phenomenon. But Matthew, I feel like you've tried to hop in there a couple times and haven't had the opportunity to get what you wanted to say out there.
Oh, I was going to ask you guys, has anyone had those King Palm rolls for the... Yeah, what do you guys think of those?
Way harsh. I don't like them.
I don't like
They're like smoking a
mouthpiece
tree, man.
as much. It's like a corn husk filter almost.
Sweetness. I find I get like a sweet something added to it when I smoke through those.
I feel similarly to you, Spartan.
I haven't tried them.
I didn't find them particularly harsh, but I did try them recently, and with the lime kush, actually, Jack. But
it could be if you buy the ones that don't have the humidity packs in them. If you're getting one really dry, those will smoke harsh and fast.
I've only tried one, so I've probably not done them service. But buddy rolled them up. He's like, I love these things, and I took a hit, and I was like, no, that doesn't taste like weed.
It changes the taste enough for me that I'd rather just smoke a hemp paper, regular joint.
Yeah, same here.
Who wants any flavored papers, man? If your weed ain't tasting good, then what the F?
Amen.
Excuse my friend.
That's what I smoke 95% of the time, Spartan, even though I look like the zigzag.
Raw dog in it.
I love
raw dog in it. But
the King Palm, the one thing I will say is it's cool. They come with there we go. There's my picture on Spartan's rolling papers over there. But the King Palms come with a wooden stick a lot of the time, which is cool for like packing it. And if you ever roll a fatter joint, it's actually nice as like a tamping tool because it kind of goes down to like a pencil tip. Yeah, there we go. Spartan grown. You're like the Vanna White.
You guys probably have hundreds of stems you could use to pack your joints with.
That's true, but I ended up.
They're my mulch layer, bro. I'm using them.
Yeah, Spartan's putting them to use that way.
There you go.
Chop them up and mulch them. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can do. You can make them into little joint tips if you cut them down, if you have the hollow stems. So there's a lot of different ways to recycle your cannabis stems there.
Yes. I put them in the mix.
Noah, have you come across anything skunky lately? Or what's the most skunky thing that you can recall in the last, I don't know, since you started smoking?
It's a good question. Well, since I started smoking, I'll echo what everyone has said. I feel like the old school cat piss bud and just like a lot of that old school stuff we used to get back in the day. And they used to call it just, skunk, and when I first started smoking, you knew good weed by looking at it and smelling it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the times when you ran into a buddy, you knew he had good weed because you could smell it in his pocket. That's the real weed. You know what I mean? And I still love that feeling, man. I still love that feeling now. And I will say something. I swear, I don't know if this is just me being a snob or because I know that I got a good setup. I know I can do some pretty good stuff. But I feel like a lot of people don't even really know what good weed is anymore. I swear to God, I show up and people are like, whoa. And I'm like, dude, this is just weed. Like, I don't really understand it. But to be really good weed, I think you got to really kind of, you get caught up in that THC number, man. I mean, you really want to have good terpy, just old school stuff that really good weed will speak for itself. I'll say my platinum plant, it's not my heaviest yielding, but I mean, when I show up with that, you can smell it over anything else that I have in the bag with it or with me. That platinum is real smelling stuff.
There's some about the skunk terpene that's so abrasive and so it like no matter what terpenes are present in that cannabis, it seems like if the skunk terpene is present, it overpowers and over distances all other terpenes.
So, yeah,
I say I agree because I was at a Fish concert and I smelled that skunk, and there was smoke everywhere. But the only thing I was like, damn, I wish I could have pinpointed where that was coming from, but I couldn't track it down.
I
There are
definitely think it
definitely
cuts
other
through.
scents that could, that could be there at a Fish concert. But
Like it cuts through the smell in the crowd, but I don't necessarily think on every single bud that I've smelled that's like a little skunky that it's the most dominant. Like I've smelled stuff that was super citrusy with like a touch of skunkiness on the back end. Like I'm growing Velvet Punch F2 right now, which is pretty grapey and it's usually a little gassy, but I think Spartan even described his as skunky in some of his messages back and forth with me.
But
And
then when you walk 50 feet away, what's the terpene that you smell on that
But
weed? It's
is
the skunk.
Sentinel saying those hippies at the Fish concert smell like skunks? I think that's what he's
Or wooks
insinuating.
or something dirty. I
Wooks.
think. Yeah.
It could
I'm
be.
saying that many things happen is what I'm saying. I'm just saying there's
Yeah.
confounding variables. That's all I'm saying.
I wouldn't be
There might be
surprised
other
if one of them had a
substances.
pet skunk there too.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, there you go.
Got a
Pet
feeling
skunks
that it's
apparently
got-
don't spray that much. They're apparently really sweet.
Well, they get
and
them. They could get them deskunked. Yeah.
do you? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Deglanded.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
that's it. Yeah.
but I
Spartan, go
think-
ahead.
I think even in Europe, that's just what they would call it as slang. Instead of calling it weed, they just call it skunk, and that's because that's what it does smell like from a distance, and that's what it does smell like when you smoke from a distance. I think it's just maybe it's myrcene, that the smell of myrcene burning or something that's very common.
One more thing though, skunk, because Sam the Skunk Man, I mean, I hate to give him credit because he's got a questionable reputation for a lot of reasons, but skunk was, in my opinion, the first lacking CBD cannabis plant that got known on a large market. The skunk number one had a absence of a CBD synthase, and it was one of the first plants in the 80s and 90s that tested over 15% THC. And at the time that was really high and it's extremely potent. And in the UK market, they consider skunk to be like the strongest shit. Like it doesn't even necessarily entail skunky. Skunk is just a term for like people saying dank, like really good weed or really strong weed or like really psychoactive weed. And that's the way that even like the media, they look at like they have like
They
cannabis,
jumped
but then
on
they're
that.
like, this is the skunk, this is the
This
like psycho
skunk,
crazy skunk
psycho,
weed.
psychosis inducing crazy skunk weed.
Yeah,
It
they would
reminds
say
me
all
a
sorts
lot
of
of
that shit.
reminds me a lot of how like when you're asking for a cola in parts of the North America, you'll just say, "Can I have a Coke?" And it's just understood that you mean cola or a Kleenex for a nasal tissue, whatever you call it.
It's like, yeah, in the South, it's definitely like that. We have a question from Dab Goblin who says, one, are skunk terps super volatile? I'll say this just to add some clarification for people's research. I don't think that terpenes encase the skunk smell at all. You can look down every single terpene list in cannabis. You will not find anything that smells skunky, in my opinion. Maybe combinations of certain terpenes might make a part of the aroma. But if you look into esters, if you look into aldehydes and ketones and flavonoids, there's a lot more than just terpenes. So don't get caught, oh, because I can't go on True Terpenes and order the skunk terpene, that there aren't skunk terpenes. There are skunk volatiles that come off of cannabis. Like I talked about, mercaptan.
Good point, dude. Yeah, well said.
Definitely one that you want to look into as the base. There's a Future 4200. I have a bunch of save stories on my profile where I go and try and go into a little bit of the basic chemistry behind the aroma for certain things. Like methylanthranilate is one I always talk about, like the artificial grape smell. And I was going to do one for skunk, but I already found that there's a few places that have hit a few of those markers really well. So if you just Google cannabis skunk aroma, there's like a forum and a discussion where people are like, I think it's this, I think it's that, I think it's this. And so if you look into that, there's a lot of good information. It's just hard to translate that audibly through a podcast because they're technical terms like I can barely pronounce. I'm probably fucking up the pronunciation of mercaptan, but MERCAPATAN, I believe is how it's spelled. And so if you want to look into that or just type in skunk cannabis smell on Google, there's a lot of really good information. And I realize this is an information podcast and we should probably just be able to dispense that out to you, but I'm just trying to drop that little breadcrumb for the people that want to go back when they listen to this and maybe hit pause, or even after the show, they can find some of that information for themselves, because I think it'll inspire, one, them to do further research on the aromatics that cause that profile, and two, just understand more of actually like what is causing it. Because a lot of us, and we're so far ahead of the average consumer or Joe out there, most people don't even know what a terpene is. So for me to be like, no, it's more than just terpenes, you need to look into more. It's like fucking so many people are just still on THC. Like all they know is THC. They're just figuring out CBD. And a lot of the world is so blind to what we regularly discuss.
Just like no other grower
huge amount.
says, most people don't even know what really good weed is. We all don't know how lucky we are that we cultivate it and
Our
know,
worst grows,
you know,
like blow people away. That's the
Yeah.
funny thing
I don't
is,
know.
like,
I
I've
think
had,
that's, I don't know. I hear that a lot and I push against it. I think there's a lot of home growers out there that grow some really good fucking weed. They just don't fucking tell everybody about it. I think
I'll
there's a
say
Well,
lot.
that's
I
what-
kind of
that's-
feel similarly.
no,
I'll
they're-
Yeah, agreed.
define
what he
they're
said.
good.
part of us. No, that's the group I was talking about. Us that grow it know good
I see.
weed. Like, yeah.
You
A
mean
Because-
lot of
somebody who's
people
like
that grow
really
good
well
weed are
removed.
quiet about it. A lot of the people that grow
Yeah.
problematic weed are asking a bunch of questions and showing up and asking for help, stuff like that. I mean, I think that people, when they get things really figured out, sometimes they become harder to find, or they sort of are off in their own little world again, which is sort of, I mean, one of the things I like about our group is that we try to keep people sort of participating in the community, and that's always a big point for me.
I think the best growers I've ever met never ask questions. You're lucky if they say anything, and you're lucky, and they are very quiet, and they're secretive about their strains, and
I was gonna
that's
say,
the old school way, man. For
we
sure.
don't even know that. We don't even know they're growing. The ones with the best
Yeah,
shit,
exactly.
I bet. Yeah.
That's how all the people I learned from, none of them are online. I wish I could show you their
Exactly.
Instagram. They're not ever going to have one. I
They
wish
don't
I
have
could
any
show you their
purpose
setup.
to, unless they're trying to share their knowledge, right? But they don't have to come looking for answers to their questions. They know how to manage their growth.
Yeah, but there is new information all the time. That's partly why I'm here, and that it can benefit your
Yeah.
garden all the time. I don't care what anybody says.
I agree with
But
that.
most people that are professionals in an industry don't do their research on Instagram or from podcasts.
True.
Yeah, and some of
Just-
these dudes have bought houses with their current technology, and it's like it's
True.
working for them.
Yeah.
They're getting this
Right,
amount of
why
dollars
change
per.
it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I think there's a lot of really good home growers out there. And I think
Oh,
some
yeah.
of them really do participate in the community as well. But I definitely think that novice growers or, new growers are more prominently represented because they need a lot of instruction and a lot of help and are sort of asking about how to do things for the first time. So we see a lot more of them.
I
I'll
will
say
say
something
this.
else. I know growers that have been growing for a long time, and I don't know how they do it, but I don't care. I'll just flat say it. They
They
can't
still
produce
suck.
good weed. Yeah.
It's
and
a resilient
sometimes-
plant.
Sometimes
For sure,
the
I know
first
people
time
like that. They've been
grower.
growing longer than me.
Mhm. Yep. Sometimes the first time grower grows the kill, man. The
Yes.
kill.
Some people got
My
it, some
first
people
grow
don't.
was good.
It's
And
really
then
a
somebody
listening and
says,
learning
"Oh,
thing.
you got pests, so you're growing inferior plants that aren't meant to be consumed," and then they get all anxious and insecure, even though they made something that's actually pretty good.
I want to
Oh,
comment
Matthew
before
Gates,
we-
that was an awesome comment. Sorry.
Before we get too far from the skunk, I want to Genetic Memory Farms. It's been a while ago now. Tagged me. He did have some input that I wanted to at least share, and it says skunk is likely a thiol, thiol,
Thiol.
which is an alcohol that has the OH group swapped for SH group on the end, and we are sensitive to it in extremely small amounts. I thought that was pretty.
There you
Like,
go.
we could be super sensitive
true.
to just
It's
that
true.
group. That's why we pick up just that from so far away. It carries to
Well,
past
and
the
the
other.
the mercaptan in particular, I think, is we're really sensitive. We're also really sensitive to some of the
per billion.
additives we put in alcohol.
Part per billion sensitive to mercaptan. That's why they use mercaptan to make gas smell. So like gas leaks wouldn't have any scent. It would kill you. You wouldn't know. But they add mercaptan to your gas, like a natural gas, so that you can detect it in your home, or propane or other things.
Why does
like
it
that.
smell like farts in my propane tank though?
That's why.
Sulfur.
So that when you smell that,
But it smells
you're
like
alerted to
farts,
a
not
leak.
good weed.
Sulfur, I thought they added, but I thought it smelled like
It's
sulfur.
It
different
smells
ones.
Probably
like
not
sulfur.
sulfur. Yeah.
Propane has a different one than methane and other different natural gases, but mercaptan is just one of the ones. And like I think that's where Noah said cat piss. I heard one of the. There's many. Here's my take on this. Take it for what you will. I don't know everything about the cannabis history, but I've spent way too many hours researching it. I think that there's many cat pisses. I don't think that there was one cat piss. There was cat pisses all over the country, and many of them come from actually super silver haze phenotypes. But there's lots of different genetic combinations that create cat piss smells in cannabis. There was one guy who came on Adam Dunn show, and he talked about his experience with the San Diego cat piss, and he said that the fire department came to their grow because they thought there was a gas leak, because the mercaptan is what they believe to have been creating that odor that people are incredibly sensitive to. And when you look into some of the papers that I've quoted on my aroma basically save stories, one of the favorite things that I come across very often for a lot of these is they were training drug dogs. So what they did was they measured cannabis through a bag with an open bag and like in a whole bunch of different ways. And they had like the top 10 aromatic compounds that created the smell of cannabis so that they could train dogs on just those compounds. And it turned out that it was a misguided thing, because like if you use a perfume, the dog can actually, even if the perfume has like a lot of the same terpenes and compounds, the dog's actually smart enough to distinguish like a very similar terpene profile perfume versus real cannabis, and if you train it properly. But
those dogs are now leading connoisseurs in our industry.
Yes.
You know, actually, I know somebody who uses dogs to detect pests, and they actually trained their dog to detect rice root aphid through
What?
volatiles. Yeah,
People, they can detect seizures.
they can do that with
detect,
wasps
They're
too,
using it for COVID now too. Even I hate
and
to use
honeybees.
that word, but dogs can smell things like that we would never even imagine, and it's pretty amazing that they can do that as an IPM thing. I always joke that my cats are part of my IPM team over here at the house, and then unfortunately for the people in my neighborhood, we got this big pink flyer up that's saying don't leave food or garbage outside your house because there are rodents, and people are getting issues with mice and rats. And fortunately for me, I have 2 cats, and the smell, I think of the cat urine alone, but also if anything got close enough to my house, I think they'll either see or hear the cats, and the cats will go after it. So I've never had an issue in the 4 years that I've lived here, but I know other people that are a house or 2 down, and they've had issues with it. So it's definitely something to think about for your integrated pest management, is maybe having a dog or a cat for some of those reasons. I see a lot of outdoor farms doing it as well, but that seems like a specialized dog, Matthew. Where was that at?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yes. You know, I shouldn't have said it without having the reference right
okay.
next to me. But no. Hold on. I'll take 2 seconds because I have them. I'm following them here. Hold on. I really think the person deserves it.
While you look, I'll just say to my point earlier that I was making is sometimes
Green Dog Pest Service Incorporated.
Oh, what a good name. 3 Dog Night. Do you know what a 3 Dog Night is? Do you guys know what that means? It means it's really fucking cold, and you got to have all 3 dogs out protecting the animals because the predators are so desperate.
Right, but it's called Green Dog Pest Service.
Oh, I thought you said 3 Dog. My fault.
That's okay, but now we learned. I
always thought the 3 Dog Night was you needed the 3 dogs to keep you warm.
Me too.
No, it was to watch the animals so they don't get attacked by the coyote and whatnot.
Wow, I learned
makes
something.
sense.
Hey, I got a question.
Go ahead,
Matthew. The discovery of the great mealybug on the cannabis. Is there anyone like taking known pests to similar plants and throwing them on cannabis and seeing if they like them, or is no one doing that just yet?
So that's definitely a thing that we could see more of. People use this sort of technique when they suspect that something, like for example, with the lettuce powdery mildew that was discovered a few years ago in cannabis and confirmed, and then recently the Golovinomyces ambrosii. But yeah, that's how you would trial that, and I don't see that very often. I don't see it in the expansive ways that we could be certainly currently. I know some people who are collecting things like rice root aphids and russet mites. I think in order to do like phylogenetic studies, like to tell, okay, all these populations, how related are they? They're all the same species, but is there like a haplogroup that like blossomed into other groups? So like there's sort of like an ancestral population and sort of a derivative population, different parts, and how is that related to global populations, that kind of a thing. Because rice root aphid in particular is from East Asia, specifically I think Japan, and its life cycle is very different from its native territory in these like cultivation settings. So it's really interesting to parse that out, and whether it's adaptation or maybe it's just not getting the right conditions or something like that. But that's something that we'll see a lot more of as cannabis becomes much more accepted in like university studies and that kind of a thing.
Right.
I just wanted to drop the name of the article that I was referencing earlier. It's called Characterizing the Smell of Marijuana by Odor Impact of Volatile Compounds. semicolon, an application of simultaneous chemical and sensory analysis. And I just wanted to give the panel all a chance to guess, because I'll read off the top 10 aromatic ones because I just think it's interesting. But I would almost bet that no one is going to guess the correct answer for the most aromatic compound found in this study. So I'm just curious, what do you think, Spartan Grown?
I have no fucking idea, dude. I can't even guess. I don't know.
Well, I think you said earlier the most common terpene was myrcene, which is, I will
Well,
spoil
that's
it
a
for everybody
terpene,
else.
but yeah, but
That's
I don't know
number
how
2.
aromatic it is.
That's number 2 on the list. So don't guess
You
myrcene,
say,
Dr. MJ.
you mean like how volatile it is, or
Yeah, I believe
Some
it's
basic plant compound.
yeah. So it's
is
a
it
plant
chlorophyll?
compound produced by cannabis.
That's what I was gonna guess.
Chlorophyll, not chlorophyll. ATG acres. Aaron, do you have a guess?
I would guess. I would get, if it's a terpene, I'm gonna guess pinene, but you guys just talked about thiol, so I
terpene.
kind of feel like thiol.
No,
Thiol.
it's
I'm
not.
going then.
It's not.
What's the
a
chemical
terpene.
class? What's the chemical class?
It's an aldehyde.
Is it an aldehyde, huh? I don't know.
Hold on, let me Google aldehyde.
Noah, do you have
I'll
a
be
guess?
I have no idea. A lot of smart.
No one in
guesses
chat
ahead
has
of
said
me.
it, so I'll go ahead and reveal it's benzaldehyde.
Benzaldehyde, huh?
Yeah, so benzaldehyde, and that's one of the most dominant. It's smelling like a cherry, so maybe they're just testing a cherry strain, and it happened to be the most dominant
Yeah, is that
aromatic.
hemp? Is that hemp they were testing,
No, it's
or
cannabis.
all cannabis?
It's high
all
THC cannabis.
Okay.
It was just whatever
All right.
they had. It was confiscated cannabis, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. You'd have to go back and read the study to verify.
Yeah.
But it says in a bag of both loose and emitted through the zip top bag over 60 HA. Number 1, benzaldehyde. Number 2, myrcene. 3, decanol. 4, heptanol. 5, methyl anthranilate, which is the artificial grape. That's where I found that initially. 6 is octanol. 7 is hexanol. 8 is methyl isohexanol ketone. 9 is linalool, which you know is the like lavender terpene. 10 is beta caryophyllene, and then I'll do 11 and 12 because they're listed. Alpha humulene, which is the hop terpene, hoppy kind of smelling, and also found in cannabis. And then number 12 is acetic acid. So I would imagine those aren't the top 12 that you would imagine to see on the most aromatic compounds coming off of cannabis through a bag, but it is interesting to know, and I think that's a really interesting paper.
That's only according to that one paper. I think that more proves
Sure. It's not expensive, but
what's up with the confiscated? What's up with the confiscated cannabis?
Yeah.
Did they pull that off a boat coming from like Cuba, or
was it like sprayed with some stuff?
Hold on. What are the ethics of using data that comes from confiscated cannabis?
Precisely.
Isn't it unethical for
Well,
us
not
to benefit
ethical.
from somebody else's loss like that?
Is it even useful?
Is it even relevant?
I agree with that as well. Is it even useful?
I'm only using it because it was good study. All the studies on cannabis that were done before any legalization were done to look against cannabis. So this one was done to train drug dogs to fuck people over.
To identify cannabis.
What year?
Educate the
What
people.
year was that?
It's a really cool fun fact for sure, but footnote, asterisk.
Look it up, Todd. I don't have the year in front of me, actually.
Right.
I'm sorry. But
that's all right. No
I wanted to
worries.
also say the reason that they used confiscated cannabis is because they couldn't legally grow cannabis to have it studied. So they were confiscating stuff from people who got arrested.
Makes perfect sense.
What they had available to them as scientists to legally examine. So that's
and not to discredit you bringing it up. It's a relevant topic and a relevant reference. I just wonder if confiscated cannabis, yeah.
Right. There's the questionable source because we don't know how the stuff was grown or what it was or any of that stuff. But I don't know. I think there's also an ethical angle on that is the same reason people don't want to take certain drugs or do other things because of the ethics of how they were developed in the first place.
The ethics aside, I just wanted to bring it up for the mere fact of the matter that they did HPLC testing, which is, in my opinion, the gold standard, that and GCMS. But with that level of testing, I very rarely see even cannabis connoisseurs, snobs, passionate people in the industry ever talking about anything else other than terpenes. So I'm just bringing it up so that we have our audience out there, the cheap home growers,
Yep.
that are home growers right now, that are going to be the master growers in the future, or the people working at the Mitten Canicos or the Black Label Organics in the future that can say, hey, when we're doing our lab testing, I know that the purple punch cross might test low on terpenes, but Jack was talking about how methylanthranolate is in there and that smells like artificial grape. So maybe we can print the percentage of methylanthranolate on there and start advertising to our people. If you like that grape candy flavor, if you like that grape candy smell, guess what? It's not going to be found in your terpenes at all. So you can spend a bunch of money terpene testing.
That is really
but
cool.
You're never
Yeah.
going to find it.
I agree
Yeah,
with
it's
this
a
completely.
secret. It's like a
Do they
secret
have
smell.
those tests?
Yeah.
Yes,
Do they
it's
have
in the
those tests
HPLC
available?
already.
Okay.
They're already part of the standards. Brandon was telling me about this. Every single place should be using the same standards. It's like ISS standards for their
Okay, so-
GCMS. And I probably messed up whatever the thing is. What was that, Matthew?
I think it's ISO, right?
Oh,
Maybe I messed
ISO.
it up.
ISO standards is probably what it is. I knew it was IS something, but Brandon said that they have, so like when you run your thing through, this is relevant to cannabis because they just found in Italy with like those 12 different professors and the Italian army, they found that THCP and CBDP. And before that was a blip, like you can see on the little thing, it looks like a stock chart almost. There's like a bunch of blips on the GCMS readout, and they'll be able to say, oh, this is limonene, and there's a big spike in limonene, and this is myrcene, and you can go through. And before there was a lot of stuff that was unidentified, but now they have a great idea of what most of these things are. Methylanthranolate is also found in Concord grapes. It's also found in lang langs and a few other things. So it's something that we can test for and educate the consumer on, because many people want to buy with their nose, but so many legal markets don't let people crack the jar and smell the bud. So if they can say, well, that's got a bunch of methylanthranolate, I love that grape Kool-Aid, grape candy flavor, like that's going to be the one I'm going to be grabbing for. I think it helps everybody in the audience to be a more educated consumer.
Well, and the other thing is that like there are people who are like you say, like a lot of people are just scratching the surface with the terpenes, and now they're learning all these other things. My question would be, if we take that list and if we presume, or if we do more research and find maybe a more expansive list that's much more comprehensive and accurate, let's say, then the question would be, how does cannabis profile, the top 10 aromatic or volatile compounds, line up with plants in general, land plants, I should say, and then sort of like see, okay, well, from an ecological perspective, how many of these are like used as attractants for various pests, perhaps. And then maybe from there, we could, like Tao was referring to earlier, make some sort of an understanding that certain pests are going to be attracted to certain cultivars that have these compounds. If you're trying to look for that, if you're trying to make more of that, because you want to get these sort of flavors and aromas, something you should be aware of.
Or like, let's say alpha pinene, something I know can be produced by cannabis. It seems more rare now, but it's in a lot of cannabis in small amounts. That's, in my knowledge, that I've seen it quoted in a few different places, and I don't have the reference in front of me right now. Alpha pinene, to my knowledge, is the most widely abundant terpene in all of nature. So it's produced by conifer trees. It's produced by a bunch of other plants. So if I was going to breed cannabis, which I currently am, but if I wanted to get into breeding, let's say for like scale production of oils, and I was trying to extract terpenes, alpha pinene, if I know it's widely available in all these other plants, maybe it's not the best one for me to go and breed up first. Maybe I should look for terpene that is more rare or only found in cannabis. The reason I think that they use the term cannabinoids is because for a while they were only found on the cannabis plant. I believe that there are some plants that have been found with cannabinoids outside of cannabis now, so they might have to change the name and nomenclature, but that was the reason that they use that
Probably
term.
They're just going to call those cannabinoids. Yeah, it becomes the
problem. I mean, this is one reason why I'm honestly, I know it has its value and everything, but that's one reason why I don't like naming conventions like that, because like people get this impression that cannabinoids like are a precursor, or that cannabis in particular is the reason why we have a cannabinoid receptor. And I think that's really unfortunate. And maybe that's sort of like, I don't know, persnickety.
Would it be unfortunate if there wasn't a negative stigma around cannabis?
No, I think
it's that's what's unfortunate.
Just from an informational perspective.
I understand,
like,
but
somebody's intuition is maybe going to give them that perspective, where if you know that already, it's sort of a misnomer, I guess is my point.
It's also a way to sort of potentially educate people about what cannabinoids are, though, too, and why people get medicinal benefit from them. But yeah,
but endogenous cannabinoids, or those compounds, I think predate our use. So therefore, I just feel like, and I feel this way about other chemical compounds, they're never
certainly,
going
yeah.
to change.
Can
Their
we
names or
verify
whatever.
for sure though
Well,
that they predate our use?
let's talk about
What if we were
let's talk
eating it?
about something a second. Evolution.
I think we can, Jack.
If we evolved
Yes.
and didn't have cannabis next to us the whole time, how did we evolve the cannabinoid endocannabinoid system in our
Because
bodies?
cannabinoids
ate the
aren't only
moss.
from cannabis.
So
like there's
Yes,
before
mosses that have it.
humans
there's
had
not
words
many others.
and
There's
language.
not many others though, Doc.
But right
So
now,
before humans had language and words with which to describe concepts, there are chemicals and receptors in our brains and in mammals in the mammalian line. Like people ask me, like, do insects get high when they eat cannabis and cannabinoids and that sort of stuff? Arthropods don't have a cannabinoid system, as far as I understand it, but mammals do. A lot of mammals do, and
Oh, well,
I know
this was
spiders
a
do.
rhetorical
Look,
question.
I've got many
I
in
know.
spider eye. And you
I
look
know
at their
the
web.
Anunnaki. The Anunnaki made us and blessed us with the cannabis plant. That's what really happened. So just
There you
so
go.
Yeah, no, it affects other mammals, absolutely. And they haven't been using
they didn't evolve,
cannabis.
right? So how did that work? You see, evolution has
It was a
its,
happy
It's designed for
accident,
a much
honestly.
smaller scale reception,
Yes.
then it gets overloaded by the amount of cannabinoids we
was
probably give it.
a
right?
happy accident.
I
That's
don't know this.
That's
I
why
don't know
I
this.
believe.
I don't know if this is 100% fact, so take it with a grain of salt. But I have heard, and I could have swore I've read it somewhere, that there is something that acts on our cannabinoid system when you're an infant and you're breastfeeding in the breast milk
Yeah,
itself.
and the mother's milk.
Yeah.
I
Yep,
believe
100%.
so. There are endogenous cannabinoids that we produce.
Produce in our own
And
body.
pass.
anandamide is one.
It's like an award, a reward to the child, so that it gets them to continue to latch on.
Mhm.
Is the way
It
was
has to do with
described when
memory.
I read.
At least one of them is linked to memory. Anandamide is the one that I'm most familiar with. When I was in psychology, I took pharmacology, and they talked about how cannabis got you high, essentially. And one of the things that it does is it bonds at a site that releases a endogenous chemical called anandamide, and that anandamide is responsible for short-term memory. And part of the reason that we have the ability to forget things is we don't want to overload our mind with senseless information. So the example I've always heard is if you're a short order fry cook and somebody says no pickles on number 3 and double cheese on number 7, you don't want to remember that for your entire life. You have to be able to take some information in and clean it out. It's like your RAM on a computer. It's like a temporary memory. And the reason that some people forget where they put their car keys or where their sunglasses are or their phone is when they're holding it in their hand while they're stoned is because that anandamide stays floating around. Yeah, and the high part of that high is the anandamide is staying too long. So instead of like only having a brief period of time where it's in your blood, it stays around for like a 45-minute to an hour period. And that extended period of having the anandamide physically alters the way that you're able to remember short-term things like where did I put my keys or what your brain, for whatever reason, deems important or not important.
Dude, that mechanism is how you use cannabis to treat PTSD. So like, deleting memories, stuff like that. I mean, that's sort of the easy way to think about it. But, dreams oftentimes affect people with PTSD, and anandamide prevents dreams. So these are the things that cannabis specific compounds can treat. It's pretty cool. I like to hear about that.
Does anyone know there's another big one, and I think it starts with a C, but there's another endogenous, I think it's a hormone or chemical or something that our body interacts with when we use cannabis, but for whatever reason, it's like not coming to me at all right now. Maybe the chat will be able to help us out. But it's definitely interesting that we do have an endocannabinoid system. I personally feel a lot better when I stimulate mine daily, whether it's RSO or vaporizing flower or smoking, whatever it is. And I'm sure many people in the panel and the chat agree with me with that. And
Hourly.
Yeah, hourly. Whether though we evolved the endocannabinoid system because we were using cannabis or we already had it because endogenous reasons, and then it sort of plays nice with our biology. I really don't mind at the end of the day because we've come to a place where we know it's an incredibly safe substance, whether you're smoking it, whether you're eating it, rolling it on your skin, drinking it in beverages. I mean, any way that you can really ingest cannabis, it's one of the safest drugs out there as far as I'm concerned. So the fact that we're just now finally getting to the point where like a good portion of the population feels comfortable with using it and like is lowering that stigma down is like a really positive thing. And I hope that we just continue to keep fighting the good fight. And as federal goes forward, that we make sure that home growers have the rights and the want to keep doing this, because some people just assume when stuff goes to scale, oh yeah, I'll let the professionals take care of it and they'll do a great job. But a lot of the times when things go to scale, the quality starts to slip. And unless you have people like Mitten Canico or Brandon over at Majestic Craft Cannabis and other what I would consider like smaller scale in the craft, although they're doing thousands of plants, they're not doing hectares. Not to say that you can't do hectares of quality, but I just think most people that are going to be scaling up that way aren't going to produce the quality. So cheers to everybody here who's coming every week.
Well, support your right to grow your own anyways. I mean, if you can go and buy quality, like screw that. I don't want to have to spend money on cannabis. Like I haven't spent money on cannabis in years. I mean, that would be like, shit, this stuff costs money. I mean, yeah, no, I want to be able to garden, support your right to garden. I mean, this is like a stupid point, I think, really. Like the fact that it could possibly become legal and everybody's like, yeah, it's basically okay and it's safe and adults can use it, but you can't grow the plant. I mean, that's stupid.
Prohibition.
Washington State, as far as I know, is one of the only states that has recreational legal weed, but we cannot grow here without a medical card. And I can attest that I have a lot of buddies around here that don't have the medical card, that want to build a grow. Doc said it right. It doesn't matter if they can produce it because of some AI or some robot way better than us. We want to have the right to grow our own, period.
Yeah, period. It's a plant.
You can't get the same quality off of hectares, in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I agree. It's not going to be the same quality because you're comparing indoor to a hectare. But even if you grow
it could
outdoor,
still be good.
One plant.
Nah.
I mean, and you know, we're talking about the medical benefits of like the cannabinoids. I think there's medical benefits to having a garden. I mean, I've talked to so many people since the pandemic that have started their gardens and get like a real sense of joy and relief from that experience. I mean, I think that there are significant mental health benefits just from that. So
yeah, what's the phrase? You know, if you don't produce your own, store bought is fine, or homegrown is fine with regards to the cannabinoid content and how it's helpful. I think that's a really great way to put it. Like stimulate, like if you know what it does with your physiology, then you can make an informed choice about your consumption and for great good or for great ill if it's abused, which everything can be, right? But I think it's way better that people are continuing to destigmatize something that was way over stigmatized in the past.
Totally agree. I think it's sad to see that I actually do have concern that as we get closer to legalization, that there will be what I call Prohibition 2.0. I saw it happen in Canada. I think in I can't think of the region, but one of the regions they don't allow home grow, and I think it's Manitoba. I saw somebody, Breeder Steve or somebody, was wearing a shirt that said Toba grown because they're like repping like, hey, we should be able to fucking grow in Manitoba. Like everywhere else is able to grow at least 4. And I know if you get an ACMPR up there medically, you can grow plants. But I think each region is different. And I totally think that we all have to, if you are never political in any other aspect of your life, that's the one time that I think it really, I think you should always embrace your right to vote if you have the ability to in a country that allows you to. That's a great thing. But make sure you protect your rights because no one else out there is going to guarantee them for you. The big lobbyists are on the larger producer sides. They don't want us to home grow. They're going to make shock and awe stories of the one kid who burnt down their grow room or the one kid who open blasted and hurt themselves or whatever. They're going to bring up all these negative stories, and it's up to you to show up in droves, as many people as you can get locally, to go to these city council meetings and talk some sense into them, show them and tell them, like Doc said, I think that people are getting benefit from the growing. I know it. I mean, there's scientific papers out there, but like when you talk to these people, it's undeniable. It's so undeniable that positive impact it has on their life to walk into that grow room. Some people are like, I don't like to go into the grow room when I'm upset. Other people are like, I'll go in there completely upset and it changes my whole day. I'm like having the best day ever, and I walk in and it just makes me happy.
And it's not like I could economically justify growing cucumbers in a tent in my office either, or growing even tomatoes or other things. I mean, the only reason this makes sense is because I'm able to grow cannabis, which is such a high value crop. And it allows me to have a garden. It allows me to grow plants. It allows me to go and interact with the plants and talk to the, maybe I shouldn't talk to you guys about all the interaction that I do with my plants.
But maybe maybe not though, because even like microgreens, I see some people growing their own food in tents. That was one of the things. One thing, U.S.
Yeah, no, that's true. You can do that. I mean, they require a lot less energy than some other crops. So
I mean,
microgreens are grown pretty effectively under like 150 ppfd, but to grow plants like cannabis or tomatoes or other things, it really helps to be much higher than that, which really isn't efficient in an indoor sense. I mean, I would only grow tomatoes outdoors and I don't have space for it. It wouldn't be worth running my lights to grow tomatoes.
I mean, take a look like the other botanical psychoactive or like pro products, I suppose you would say, of psychoactive substances that are really common. Alcohol, you got your wheat, you got your vineyards or fruit that make various wines. You can't very well, you can't very well as easily produce that. Yeah, you can grow hops. That's true, but that's
not in your condo.
But not in your condo, right? And
they get
certainly, like it's not the complete part of the picture. Whereas with cannabis, it's like you grow it, and then you harvest it, and then you dry it, and you cure it, and like that's kind of it, or at least that's all it needs to be, right? Whereas the other things, the other products require much more process. So I think from like you were saying earlier, like we were stating. There's a home logistics and economics factor that is not the same as it is for like tomatoes or like dwarf trees, like you were talking about, Dr. MJ Coco, earlier in the agricultural revolution.
I will say that some people are growing they're growing their cannabis and then they have some stuff in smaller pots that's like they're co-planting and getting, I don't know, some fruit and vegetables, small things that aren't massive, or they just have a pot here and there in between the cannabis plants just to get a little extra something. And it's more of like a feel good thing because I'm sure they're still buying a ton of their own food that they're not producing enough to eat exclusively off of their own home gardens, but it's that first step in the right direction.
It's the cannabis plant that really supports the rest of the plants. In business, we would call that the cash cow that's sort of supporting the side projects, you know?
Exactly. 100%. It's why the store sells the watermelon and the pineapple for the same price. One is for the other. Subsidizes it, I should say.
Yeah.
Like Tesla and SpaceX.
I love Tesla.
Well, they separated them now, though, but yeah, for a while
they've been separated. Tesla's public and SpaceX is only privately held, and definitely a big fan of Tesla. They're an awesome company. Shout out to Elon Musk. He's making the world a better place, and lowest cost solar in America through Tesla. So it's no sellout. I do own stock in their company, so I will disclose that, and not to
market mover Jack Greenstock.
Not trying to move the market. Buy and hold. Fucking long-term invest. I don't believe in day trading, but if you were going to buy, that was the first stock that I ever bought personally. I'll admit that. I researched them for a long time, and
Wolf of Wall Street over here.
It did well enough for me to buy myself one. So
I was thinking about that too. Even the indoor grows, if I had a warehouse or if I owned a warehouse, I guess I would want to like have sunlight. I don't understand why they don't have sunlights in indoor grows that are commercial, you know.
A lot of these people don't.
I've seen a grow set up that way in LA.
Yeah, you can do greenhouses, but
just
it's
have
a different
or even
setup.
like a clear roof.
Right.
No, I've seen pinhole lights like one by one holes punched in the roof. Plus they have DEHPSs hanging from 20-foot tall ceilings.
Right.
And that was a Jungle Boys grower.
It's just how much light are you going to move in through there? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not much. It's just a little additive. Maybe that secret photon that comes from the sun that you can't get from your
It drops your costs a lot. I saw one group doing it, and they got their PPFD values. Basically, they installed a bunch of those solar tubes or whatever. It takes it like reflects it down and comes through. So they were using lights. Yeah. It's like a light depth greenhouse, but a lot more climate control. You're basically growing indoors. You're getting
you can seal a room
full
that
spectrum
way.
of the sun.
Yeah,
and you're lowering. Brandon, I wish he was on this week because he was just talking about.
It changes plants though. The sunlight changes the pistils pink on strains that can have pink pistils, where mostly indoors it doesn't.
You rarely see it indoors.
And a lot of mixed grows are set up like that.
Plastic,
If you really want to maximize production, though, you want to keep your PPFD levels constant, and if you want to do that in a mixed lighting setup, you have to have pretty advanced sensors and controllers going on to adjust the lighting.
There's really, I've seen a pretty good setup for, it's designed for greenhouses. It's a PPFD sensor that sits right on the top of the greenhouse, and it measures the light that's coming in at
Yeah.
that point. And then there's a sensor at the canopy telling you what the plants are getting, and then it adjusts whether you have an LED or an HPS. It tunes it up and down to get you your ideal throughout the entire light cycle. So it's definitely
There's no
doable. It's just
shading.
a cost thing.
Yeah, exactly. There's systems that are designed to set up. I mean, and that's how they design good mixed lighting grow spaces.
I'm going into
But
one
it's
soon.
more than just sort of, I mean, you can't do it very effectively cheaply because like on a cloudy day, you don't know what to set the lights at. And you don't want to just sort of have them be, experiencing a cloudy day that day. You don't want to blast them with way too much PPFD for too long. So
It's definitely a balance. I will say there's a lot of people who have yet to experience what I personally feel I've experienced very great grown outdoor. So like when you see something that's grown outdoor and you're like, holy shit, this is as fire as indoor by itself with no depth, no greenhouse, no whatever. That breaks some people's stigma that they have in their head. I know a lot of people, and I've looked at some data on this. I think 80% of cannabis users prefer indoor. And that says a lot about where we're at as a sort of society. I don't know I should probably pull these stats up and share them with everybody when I quote them. But I saw it
that makes
offhand.
sense though, Jack, doesn't it? I mean, from a horticultural perspective, in an indoor garden, we can control all the variables and create really consistent results that produce, sort of the quality that customers are used to. Outdoor, there's so many variables from weather to sun to pests to all sorts of stuff that affects the quality of the finished product.
When you get it done, when it gets done right outdoors, sorry, my alarm went off. But when it gets done right outdoors, it's better, I believe, personally.
It's a totally
and
an
I've
opinion
seen
thing.
it, Jack, like you were saying.
Opinion, 100%.
You can't even. I had a strain. You couldn't tell the difference if it was when it was grown outside. But certain strains, it makes a world of difference. You could just see it was outdoor weed. But I think there's certain strains that really transfer well. And
certainly had good outdoor.
I stopped
really
growing
tell.
indoor when my outdoor trim tested higher in THC than my indoor flower. That's when I gave up on indoor.
I'm telling you, people don't know. That's why they think indoor is better, because they don't know what really
That's
good
the
outdoor.
Some places are better than others. I mean, from an IPM perspective, at least, there are reasons why I would choose indoor over outdoor, but you can definitely have good from both. And I've had good from both in my experience personally. And I think there's a lot of economical reasons why somebody would choose to go the outdoor route. And also from a pest perspective, certain locations are good, like people who are growing in California, a lot of them, might have had to dealt with the wildfire impacts from the smoke and that sort of a thing. That's an abiotic example, but a biotic example would be various pest populations and how easy it is to mitigate them. I think it's valid either way, though.
With all that being said, I just think that there's so many people out there who don't know what the experience is of having either like great light depth or great outdoor, great greenhouse grown stuff that was mostly sun grown, where they've had a lot of indoor. They know what it looks like. They know the color of it is usually a little bit brighter green. The outdoor tends to be a little bit more like orangish or yellow. It has some more of those hues to it. And it can even get like an amber to it, depending on how harsh the seasons are. But I think for, like I was talking about earlier, so many people don't even know what a terpene is. So for a lot of them, they're just breaking it down, rolling it up and smoking it, and they can't tell one to the other, like cannabis is cannabis is cannabis. So a lot of them just buy the indoor because they think that's what they're supposed to buy. They just haven't had the chance to try a good variety of outdoor or greenhouse grown flower. And I just think as we move forward, there will still be a lot of people, many of ourselves included, because it is convenient to grow indoor, especially at the price points that things are at right now. For us, we can produce our own for much less than we can buy it indoor grown elsewhere. So it makes sense for a lot of people to grow indoor. You get great quality, you have a lot of control. But the one thing that I really think is the sun spectrum beats out any cannabis grow light. I'll put the sun head to head with any grow light on the planet. So if you do have a good season, or even if you don't have a good season, maybe that brings out something in the plant that you would never see expressed indoor.
True, very true.
A
very
terpene
true.
profile.
Definitely.
Somebody said
The secret photon. I call it the secret photon. We'll never
Undoubtedly.
know.
Undoubtedly
Bob
the
says
sun.
light bulb weed when he talks about indoor. I think it's Rasta Bob who says that. But then there's other people who say indoor weed has a high that's like here, and then like outdoor is like here. You know, it's like it's more like expansive, and they claim it's because the plants are in an enclosed space, so your high is like it's really like metaphysical, and I don't believe in that. But it's an interesting thought because. A lot of indoor stuff smokes similarly because a lot of it is related to each other, not just because it was grown indoor. It was also grown indoor. It's related to cookies or OG or whatever is popular at the time. And a lot of people will watch like the Jungle Boys and buy the same lights as them, buy the same nutrients as them, and try and grow it as similarly as them as possible. And
You know
people
what?
do that with us. So, I mean, people are modeling themselves after other growers all the time. And so a lot of stuff does come out similarly.
That is true.
Another
It is
issue is
applicable.
I bet you the outdoor stays around a lot longer, so it's older. A lot of people are smoking older outdoor compared to indoor that gets sucked up and eaten up right away, so it's a little fresher and stuff.
Well, ultraviolet radiation is certainly a thing that can be really disastrous and deleterious for various pests like fungi, bacteria, insects, mice, that kind of a thing. They hide from it. So that could be a boon. Like there are ways to use the environment if you're strategic about it, if you had the options and abilities to be strategic about it and choose and plan, which a lot of people don't have. So I upfront acknowledge that. However, if you know about the physiology of your plant and the pests you're dealing with in the environment that you're working in, you can have those advantages. But also the UV radiation has effects directly on cannabinoid content, right? And so perhaps through the drying, curing, but also just through the growing process, it could be a reason why there might be a modulation there in the kind of high that you get because the product is different.
There's interesting studies about elevation and UV. One other thing I wanted to say about indoor versus outdoor is I've noticed typically outdoor tends to be a little bit leafier. It produces sometimes more leaf than hard nug, and that it was really strain dependent, and it depends on how much direct sunlight you're getting. But Spartan grown, I know you've actually grown certain strains indoor and outdoor, if I'm remembering correctly, in your environment, maybe even the same cut. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this and how much difference you saw with some strains and other strains and what sort of things you noticed before, because you got about 10 minutes left before you get out of here.
Yep. First and foremost, I want to say you can grow fucking amazing weed indoor or outdoor. The bullshit about comparing the two, it's just bullshit. That's what it is. You know, there's good indoor growers that couldn't do a fucking thing outdoor, and there's good outdoor growers that couldn't do a fucking thing. You know, vice versa. It's just
hold on.
It's up to the
I
grower.
won some awards on my indoor before I switched to outdoor.
Some can do both, cannabis. Aaron. Yeah.
Okay. Just saying. I didn't hear you cut out. I didn't hear what you said. Say it again.
I was just saying that you know, just because someone does really well on one doesn't mean you
can't finish the sentence.
Cut out again.
You cut out at the exact same point again.
Just talk. Just ignore me. Just go.
All right, sorry. So yeah, you have to at least learn the environment before you shit on it and grow in it, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. For sure, I've seen strains that you would swear there are different strains between the indoor and outdoor. There was that much of a difference. Vortex comes to mind for me. For sure, just as a general thing, it is a leafier plant outdoor, but it's getting hit with UV. You know what I mean? It has to. It's protecting itself. But that means you have more work to do. Yet, you know, at least the way that I grow outdoors, I leaf strip, especially the insides. So it just makes for more work, but it's, you know, more yield too by a lot usually. So it's just two different beasts, and it's hard to compare them. Just like when people compare, hydroponic or synthetics and organics. I prefer organics, but I grow far more plants than synthetics. So they both have their place. It just depends on what you're trying to do, I guess. But I just want to reiterate the fact that you can grow amazing fucking weed indoor, and you can grow amazing fucking weed outdoor, as long as you're dedicated to it.
Do you have any favorite plants that maybe are one's better indoor or outdoor, or just anything that stands out genetically?
You know, I just go year from year usually when I do my outdoor select. Like right now, currently, my favorite plants is like I am in a situation to where I no longer have an outdoor location to grow other than my own property where I live. I live in a subdivision. that really limits me to what I can do. So I'm playing with autoflowers this year. I plan on. Um, in fact, I've crossed that Cuvée male with a tire fire auto, and it's seeded out right now. And I plan on, putting a handful of those outdoors and just sorting them. Whatever flowers, I'll just let flower, and then whatever doesn't flower by August, I'll clone and take it inside and flower it out and see. I will hopefully get, if it's a photo period, I'll hopefully get a real fast finishing photo period, because Cuvée was already a fast finisher to begin with, and then crossed with an auto. I mean, that's a super fast finisher. So it might be a really quick, fast finisher that I can keep around for an outdoor the next year. You know what I mean? It would finish before the cold comes.
Do you have a fence line or something that maybe you could like
6
set up a
foot.
scrog and keep it below? I've seen some people get away with in residential areas. It's still a somewhat risk, but they grow it semi close to that fence line and they train it real flat so it stays like 2 or 3 feet below the fence line and they get a nice little bush.
Yeah, I'm just gonna mix it within my own veg plants, or like vegetables and stuff. Interplant in my vegetable garden, my raised beds. I have a 6 foot privacy fence around my whole backyard, so it will be fenced in and locked. But yeah, I'm just gonna try to hide it in the open rather than, make a scene.
That's probably the way to go about doing it in your situation. I've seen some people actually really successfully get away with doing that, and I think it might have even been you. I heard a story of somebody who grew hop vines that they hid their cannabis plants behind, like that hops growing over like maybe their back balcony, and then they had cannabis plants like tucked behind
That
there.
wasn't me. That's a good idea.
Yeah, so there's a lot of creativity that can happen. I know Red Setter Farms grows some massive ass sunflowers, and I'm sure you can sneak some plants into gardens with giant. Just there's a lot of plants out there that can grow similarly large and give you privacy.
He plants the sunflowers on purpose in strategic locations to act as support for his cannabis plants. So yeah, so they provide some blockage and they provide support for his plants.
I will definitely say wind abatement is a underutilized strength. Using foliage in that way, using plants in that way. So I commend that.
Something interesting I saw was somebody with the genetic they were running and where they're at with their sunlight. They noticed their plants that were partially shaded. There was a tree and like I don't know there's might be a term for it when sun comes through like a broken up tree line where it just gets like sort of speckled light.
Like
That plant,
dappled or partial shading.
yeah. So the plants that were in that were super healthy and happy, and then the ones that were in full sun were like just not as happy. So it's interesting when people kind of figure out those little, I guess it's even like a microclimate within their yard that might really work for some strains or even just like certain categories of plants. Like I know aloe doesn't love direct sunlight. I think it's more of like it wants to grow in a little bit of the shade. And yeah, it's just interesting to
They're a
note these
Mac
things.
one, man. I've noticed Mac one. I always put it in the corner. She does way better than if I put her, right underneath the light.
I heard she does way better outdoor. Sequence was growing her in the greenhouse and didn't have the
Bulletproof,
vegging.
dude.
She was just like hammering it, growing fast, healthy, and
Mac
huge.
1 was?
Yeah, as far as
Dude, my
being
Mac,
for pest and mildew and molds and stuff, it was fucking bulletproof out there in the hoop house.
I would agree, but it can't take a lot of light. Like you were saying, I have to put it grows so much slower than any of my other plants. And so I put it underneath. It's all so it goes underneath the bigger canopy, well, lightly watered, lightly sunned.
Sounds like a cookie, almost.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
She likes
and
to
there's
take
cookies in
these-
it, right? It's Miracle Alien Cookies or something like that. Doesn't that what MAC stands for?
I think so, yeah.
I'm not sure that it has cookies in it, but it says it's named Miracle Alien Cookies.
Yeah, not like the cookies, the forum cut,
Right.
but there is some
Right.
in the lineage. It's got some of that DNA shared, and I know the forum cut specifically does have some similar. It doesn't veg slow, but it has some of those similarities. And some people theorize that there might be some like GDP in the cookies, and GDP is a notoriously slow vegger, or like the purple Urkel and some of the early grapes, grape ape. And some people even theorize that those are all the same plant. So there's a lot of interesting history that is really difficult to actually nail down because the illegalities back then and a lot of bag seeds and stuff that were popped after famous cuts went around and people rename shit just because it makes it sell more or makes them not be tied in with another crew, which could get them in trouble and stuff like that. But forgot where I was going with that a little bit. But Spartan Grown, I just realized it is 5:45, 5:43 out here on the West Coast. I know it's about 8:43 where you're at in Michigan, and you got the Michigan Bros Grow Show coming up in about 15 minutes. So I want to give you a chance to give your final thoughts and shout out before you got to get running.
Yeah, just shout out everybody on the panel, and shout out chat. Always keeping me entertained in chat. They're cracking me up earlier. And yeah, just growers love, and everybody keep on growing. That I'm adding that to my hashtag of hashtags. I love that, keep growing. So I'm going to do growers love and keep growing.
Cheers to that. Here.
Keep growing, Spartan.
Keep on
Peace
growing,
out, Spartan.
Peace and love, man. Go take care of those dogs and get yourself stretched out and ready for the next show. Have a great one. But everybody on the panel, thank you for joining me this week. I know we've got about 15 minutes left, so I wanted to pass it to anybody if you have any final topics that you might want to bring up. I know Tao usually has a good question about this point, but anybody else?
Yeah, I got one I could chuck at everybody. So I was watching some stuff, whatever. I get some of my information from podcasts and YouTube, and they were discussing heavy metals and how certain composts have heavy metals, kelp meal has heavy metals, this and that have heavy metals. And first off, what do you guys know about heavy metals? Why are they so bad? Do they burn when we smoke them? And then the second question would be, and they were talking about bioremediators of things that will suck it up, like sunflowers are a good one, this and that. Well, if it's really a danger, perhaps we grow a cover crop of some sort of bioremediator and then take it away. Will that pull out the heavy metals if you don't chop and drop? Because if you drop it, you're just putting it back, I would assume.
That's
So
correct.
there you go. Roll with that, all those questions, and throw it out there. Thanks.
I don't know that many cover crops are great bioremediators. I think most of them are like sunflowers or cannabis that are maybe larger, fast-growing plants, but I could be wrong on that. There's probably a bunch of bioremediators.
I think there's a lot of overlap with those two traits.
So with that being said, I don't think it would be as quick and easy. Maybe you do like a hemp crop, do a full, like if you have a field, you grow a hemp crop out that you're just going to chop, pull the CBD off of it. The thing about heavy metals is they're actually really easy to remove. Spartan just left, but he told us the story a while back about how they used canna cocoa at the Mint and Canico. And for whatever reason, they got a bad batch and it made them fail for heavy metals. And in Michigan, what you can do instead of destroying your entire crop is you can extract it and then have the heavy metals pulled off. And the name heavy metals actually makes sense because they are heavy. So when you get it in oil, it sinks down to the bottom. So if you're spinning it in like a centrifuge, the terpenes and the lighter things, the oils, drift up to the top. So you get your cannabinoids and your oils up here and the heavy metals down here. Now, I'm oversimplifying that by a lot just for the sake of the podcast, but essentially that is really what they're doing. And heavy
just
metals,
be careful about chopping and dropping any accumulator plants you're using. That biomass needs to be disposed of like it's hazmat. Yeah.
And also consider that you're going to concentrate it then too, like even more so.
And the other thing with that is you're using up those nutrients then. So you have to add stuff back, which might have heavy metals in it again. So
yeah, that's a good point.
So
I'll say this: look at your broccoli. There's heavy metals in it. Look at every single vegetable and fruit
but
that
that's,
you
I
eat.
guess,
There's
that's
a
the other
level
part
of heavy metals that's
microplastics too, from that matter.
The other part of the question is we're eating that like Eagle 20. We could eat it, but we can't smoke it.
Dosage question.
What's with the heavy metals? Why is it so bad anyway?
It's just a dosage question. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think the term heavy metals is often used to like strike fear. I'm seeing these ads now about vaping and heavy metals. Which is, and they have like shards of metal flying around in the ad and stuff. So there's a certain
certainly.
We're here to confuse you.
Have you guys seen this ad that I'm talking about? Yeah. So,
where the guy's like, to illustrate how bad the heavy metals are,
Yeah.
we made this like digital creation of a monster. But like, remember, the real monster is inside
like it's a
you.
frag grenade
And
or
I'm like,
something in your
okay,
lungs.
maybe
like,
this is just sort of playing with a scary sounding word. And I think of that. They're not shards of metal in the plant or anything. These are in very basic chemical form, but it's like having an iron or some other heavy metal, but it's in some ionic form.
The big
And it
ones they
makes
test
you-
for
it makes you
are
stupid.
dangerous. mercury, cadmium,
Yeah.
arsenic.
Yeah, no, and some of them
lead,
are dangerous.
chromium,
Absolutely.
nickel. They can
Well, that's what I
poison
mean.
you.
Just-
They can
that's
literally.
what I'm
Always a
asking. That's
dosage
why.
issue, though, Jack.
At
It's
high
always-
levels, yeah. At
It's
certain
always
levels, they'll
about how
poison
much
you.
is there and how are you consuming it. Yeah, mercury
When
is
your
very
body-
dangerous and it bioaccumulates. And there are certainly heavy metals to be aware of and to be sort of afraid of. And I think it's also important to know that we throw that around. There are heavy metals like tin and stuff in some of the tin is often in hydrogen peroxide, especially if you're using a cheap hydrogen peroxide or a pharmaceutical grade hydrogen peroxide. You could be, contaminating your plants with a heavy metal. That may lead you to fail testing. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know that it poses any particular health risks to us.
Tinfoil. Do they use tinfoil for food?
I
No,
want to say this,
it's
Tao. Listen, so there's a great
Well, that's
video.
aluminum, yeah.
John Kohler
Yeah.
from Growing Your Greens made a video about using rock dust in his gardening.
Right. Yeah.
Rock
yeah.
dust has trace amounts of heavy metals depending on which rock dust you get.
Yeah.
And he
Azomite
broke it
definitely
down.
does.
He broke it down and he compared the levels of heavy metals that you'd be getting in one of these rock dusts if you mix it into your soil versus the levels of what you're going to eat, your broccoli and your lettuce and all these things that are grown. The levels that are so low there that the levels that you're getting in your rock dust broken out, it's so insignificant. It's such a low level.
Minuscule. Yeah.
We just happen to be in the most overregulated product industry ever of all time. Cannabis
You
is
nailed
tested
it, Jack.
at a
See, that
Fucking
standard
makes
nailed
sense.
it, dude. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
above pharmaceuticals. It's tested at a standard above food, alcohol, tobacco. Every other drug that's ever been produced and sold has been tested at a lower standard. Our standard of
yeah.
safety for mycotoxins, for
I
heavy
agree
metals.
with those.
That's literally my point. Guys,
Yeah.
they use tin, which is a heavy metal, as a stabilizer in medical grade hydrogen peroxide.
Right.
Right.
Yet if they find a part per billion in our product, it has to
Right.
be destroyed.
When
So-
I'm
But
worried
is
about
there,
heavy metals,
is there
when
a
I'm
real
worried
danger,
about
though? So should I not worry at all? Should I be
Well,
concerned about
no.
certain
A
inputs?
little,
Talk
but not
to
a
me.
lot.
I would
Yeah.
I would
Okay.
say
Think
it's
about
like
it,
this.
but don't wallow.
I would say it's like
I
this.
don't.
Heavy
I
metals.
don't get
when
paid enough to wallow. Sorry.
when I think of heavy metals being problematic, I'm thinking about them in, like Dr. MJ is saying here, a high dose, in a dose that would be pretty appreciable and problematic.
Right.
And I was working with somebody recently who is cultivating in an indoor situation, but when I did the biogeographic research that I do every time I do like an evaluation, like I do with my consultants or with my clients rather, they were very close to a river that was polluted like for a long time due to like harborage and early like industrial revolution naval fouling and that kind of stuff. And so like knowing that, like they were considering like expanding out, but I'm like, no, you probably shouldn't do that. This place that's like right next to you is really bad. And it's definitely a big consideration to make. So like in some places I think it'd be a lot more important, but yeah, when people, you have to consider the dose and you have to consider the scale, and maybe some people don't like, it's like the bug poop thing, right? It's a very, very much a similar sort of thing. People are worried about the predatory mite bug poop, but when they get the pests and they spray the pests away, they're not worried about the pest poop. It's like they're focusing on one thing and not the other.
The one
It's
thing
dissonant.
I would focus on is concentrates. If you're going to be making concentrates, worry about your heavy metals because they're going to get extracted and concentrated up. And most of the data that I'm reading about from Florida, from California, and a few other states.
Wait, it concentrates are stripping off the resin. I would imagine the heavy metal's not in the resin, right?
Clearly, that's not the case because
That's what's
We're talking
happening.
in-
huh?
That's actually what
Ball
Spartan
here.
just said, and I was questioning that too. I thought that there's a serious chance of accumulation of the contaminants in an
I
extract.
think it depends on how you're
Absolutely.
separating it, right? How you're
Yeah, how you're
creating that.
extracting it, I
I'll say
imagine,
this,
is
I
the
wouldn't take a
filtration
risk.
stage. But there's a risk, certainly, of just concentrating that along with concentrating everything else.
Yeah, I
if you
think
know
that's
there's heavy
valid.
metals, go through the process of stripping it in the concentration process. There is processes out there. People know how to do it. You can go on Google and look it up. I do think it's actually as simple as using a centrifuge and spinning it at as proper speed and removing certain layers at a time. And then you can test the fractional, it's like a fractional distillation, but a more simple way of going about doing it. So there are concerns with heavy metals. To answer your question, the American one, there doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to lead directly to human health, but they can get you, like, not that you're in a legal market selling it to people, but in those markets, if anybody does aspire, I think all of us ultimately someday would like to grow in a capacity where you could give your stuff to somebody else. And if that's going to be the case, you want to do that knowing you're not going to get them sick or harm them. And if it does get tested at some point, you don't want to be held accountable for harming them. And if we can do our best going in to keep the heavy metal levels really low so that our concentrates don't have to worry, that's probably the better. But if you do know that there is some in there, then I think I'd go through learning the process of how to clean up your concentrate. So that's just sort of my take on the matter. And we lost the American one. So I guess now would be a better time than ever to go through and let everybody give their final thoughts and shout outs before we close this out for tonight. So first, I'll give it over to Matthew Gates.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation today for the panel and also in chat. I just want to reiterate a lot of good pest news lately. B. coolie virus was recently found in Arizona, and you can learn more about that on my YouTube channel. I also have some observational footage, the first of its kind for grape mealybug in cannabis. So if you're interested in that, if you want to get a head start on a new pest in cannabis, you can check out those videos on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol. You can also find my content on my Instagram account at SyncAngel, and you can also find various musings on Twitter at SyncAngel.
Thank you as always for joining us, and I do hope that the panel and the chat do go check out those things. I still watch your content and greatly enjoy it, so I'm happy to see you continuing to put it out there and sort of breaking boundaries and documenting things that have never been documented before, but also just giving really helpful information about different things in IPM space. So thank you, Matthew, for all of that, and thank you for joining us this week. Next up, I'm going to pass it to Aaron the Grower.
Oh, I'm already unmuted. I went to unmute myself, but I'm going to just mute myself, so let me not. I'm Aaron the Grower. Thanks for letting me talk shit with you guys. I always have a good time. Check me out on Instagram, ATG Acres, or atgacres.com, or my new YouTube channel, ATG Acres Aaron the Grower. I'm gonna try and put out about a video a month. I'm a little bit behind because I'm in the middle of an incredibly massive project to undertake by oneself, which is building a farmstead. So my most of my energy is there. But if you guys have any questions in terms of the chat, if the chat has any questions about growing or anything that I got going on, feel free to reach out. Or if you just want to say hi, do that. I love that too. So
can I hunt on your land?
You can. Only you.
Okay.
I wonder what would be there. I'm curious myself, but
deer. That's about it.
Okay. Similar to
12
Ohio,
acres. It ain't much. It's it's like you could.
It ain't much, but it's honest work. That's my favorite
the
meme.
most
is that
dangerous
that farmer.
Game.
You ever see the farmer?
Oh yeah,
meme
it ain't
like,
much,
it
but
ain't
it's honest
much, but it's honest work. It's
well,
like,
I'll tell you what. I got 10 cattle on my property right now. My contractor, he does that, and his property's a little overloaded. So going out there and seeing these I mean, this is like real country living, and so it's an adjustment for me. I've done mountain living and farm life in that regard, but this is so new, and so I respect that. Dude, nice looking canopy there, very dense with cola.
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually give it over to next Noah the Grower. He can talk us through a little bit of what we're looking at over there, and let us know where to find you.
Looking real good.
Yeah, this is just one hood I got right here. This is a Sherbet plant. This is a purple punch, and then this right here is just one do-si-do. And yeah, I've had a chance now. I got this stupid thing on my leg still, but I'm out here being able to do my stuff again. And man, you don't know what you got till you don't got it, man. The last 2.5 months, whatever it was, not being able to be in my room, man, it drove me nuts. And I'm kind of like really tucking and hitting my levels and stuff. Tal's question earlier, man, that's exactly why you gotta protect your right to grow your own. I personally don't like the taste of fertilizer that has a lot of metal. The only one I will use sometimes is a little liquid Cool Bloom, because it's got amino acids and stuff in it that I've just been growing with for so long, and it helps me get a little bit higher yield and stuff. But I stick to almost all organic stuff. I'm not on Brandon's level or some of these other guys who have that live in soil, but I do my best. And yeah, I started to be long-winded, but if you got any questions about anything I got going on, or you just want to see my stuff, I'm Noah the Grower with 2 E's. You can come check out my page, and I answer all direct messages. Great show as always. And Jack, thanks for hosting. Tao, Dr. MJ, Sink Angel, Spartan, all you guys, man. All you guys are ninjas, and I'm proud to hang out with you and have a great time and learn a lot.
Cheers to you, Noah. That's a hell of a light right there for one hood, man. That's a beautiful canopy, and I just it's like the Pineapple Express quote. I just want to stick my face in there. It's like, damn, man, that's a beautiful, beautiful look. I'm not even gonna stop spotlighting the video right now. I'm just gonna have to go and figure out who's next in the lineup to give their final thoughts and shout outs. The American one, I don't think I've gotten to you yet. So where can we find you?
You can find me. I'm the American one on YouTube, and yeah, I say it every time. I'm really will put some more YouTube videos up, but I'm the American one underscore with underscore Ekeens on the IG, and yeah, search the American one, and I'm the guy. I think there's only one with the American top hat taking a bite out of the world, and yeah, shout out Noah, looking great, dude, and Jack, thanks for hosting. Shout out Shane, the originator, and all the panel. It was a good one tonight. I got a bunch of questions and I learned a lot. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you as always, and I think last but certainly not least is Dr. MJ.
Hey guys, yeah, Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. I want to remind everybody that is growing with us in the New Year's Grow Challenge that we are about half an hour away from giving away the Photon Tech X465 Watt Pro. We're having a little sort of watch party for the lottery drawing, which is tonight in our chat room. So head on over there, and I'll be there shortly. It was fun, guys. And if you're not in the NYGC, get in the SFAC. We're going to start that up on April 20th, and we'll start signing up for that, I think, next week. Always fun to grow together. Always fun to be here with you guys on Sunday. Happy Valentine's Day. Go spend some time with your significant others or the people that you love in your lives. And I'll see you guys next week.
Cheers, Doc, and great job on that Mars Hydro review recently. I really enjoyed that latest video, their bar style light, him doing the PPFT testing and his evaluation of it. Really well done, as always. The content over on his YouTube channel and his website is incredibly well done. I think that people really appreciate it. But based on the number of comments I saw, I was kind of blown away by how much activity you've got going on over there so soon after the video was posted. So cheers to you, Doc. Thank you again for coming, and definitely check out the Spring Autoflower Challenge. And cheers to everybody who's in the New Year's Grow Challenge. It's
yeah,
awesome
good luck,
candy.
guys, for winning. I hope somebody wins it that really wants it tonight. So I'm always excited to do a prize like this.
Always awesome to see people in the community winning these giveaways, and a lot of the times I do think it has been going to the growers that really need it. It seems to be the way that it works out. So cheers to anybody who's entering, and good luck. But I want to go ahead and give my final thoughts and shout out, I guess. You can find me at Jack Greenstock on Instagram as well as Cannabuzz. You can also email me, jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter. I might have already said that, Jack_Greenstock. 50 of the books so far, a little bit over 50 of the books have been delivered. More than 50 other ones are on the way. So if you haven't gotten your book yet and you've seen a bunch of other people posting theirs, please be patient. They are on the way. And I'm really excited to see everybody receiving them and reading. It's a big honor for me to see everybody really enjoying the book, and just having it in their hands is sort of surreal. As an author, this is my first ever published book, so it's really cool to see the community coming together behind it and being really supportive. So thank you everybody who got one. Really awesome to see. And like I said, it is Valentine's Day, so I'm going to go spend some time with my lovely wife, Lady Greenstock. Hopefully you all out there have somebody to love, and if not, you got all of us sending you growers love. So have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Have a great
Grower
week.
love, everyone.
And we love all of you, and we love you too, Jack.
Happy growing.
Oh,
Adios.
peace out,
Happy
all.
growing, everybody. It's been a great week, and really appreciate you all, and I look forward to talking to you every week, and see you next week. Jack Greenstock.